what's happening, everyone? It is Tuesday. What's going on? It's March 10th, 2026. This is the Jeff Gerstmann Show. I'm your host for this week's edition of the show. My name is Jeff Gerstmann. Hello, Sagittarius. No. Also, no. Also, I'm not even well, look. How's everyone doing? It's been a weird week here. We've been finally fixing the last of the damage from the Christmas Eve flood that flooded the living room of the house. They came in and they set up. So they had all the concrete from a couple weeks ago when they were doing all the hammering and drilling to take out the old concrete. Like all of that stuff. The outdoor work got done, and so it was time to finally do the indoor work. And so they came on Friday and installed all the big dehumidifiers and fans and put up a big tent around that wall to keep people out and to keep it all isolated and everything. And they ran incredibly loud fans for basically the entire weekend. And so, like the type of, like, you can't talk. Really, you can't have conversations. So it's just like me and my wife standing around the kitchen looking at each other going like, it's loud, it's bad. Anyway, all that stuff got turned off on Sunday, and they're here right now collecting that stuff. And then later this week they will fix the holes in the wall from where all the moisture ruined the walls. And then it'll be done, and then we'll be ready for the next disaster, I suppose. the next nightmarish thing to happen. So I really want it to rain now. I spent all this money, tens of thousands of dollars on concrete. I really want it to rain now so I can see what all of the drainage looks like, all these French drains and all this other stuff that's now a part of my life. But instead it's going to be 90 degrees in a day or two here, because that's Southern California, I guess. I don't know. It's a disaster. Everyone here is doing good. I don't know. My kids have realized that the controllers come off the sides of the Switch 2 and that they can play games together, which has been interesting. That led to some Mario Party play, where they just wanted to play the mini games. They don't want to play the board game really, and that was fine. They did okay with that because it was just like limited short term competitive. But there's definitely like no one likes to lose. My daughter, my oldest, is super competitive, and that is now rubbing off on my son a little bit, and so he's just like unhappy. So when he loses a bunch in a row, he gets unhappy, and it's a lot of like, just no. This is good. You need to learn that sometimes you lose stuff. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Also, it's Mario Party. It doesn't matter. And they've been messing around with like Animal Crossing and a few other things, kind of trying to figure out multiplayer. They're playing some Mario Tennis. With limited success in Mario Tennis. That feels like it has not been a very exciting thing for them. But also, like, they're not treating it. They are not treating the hardware with respect and care. And so I am coming closer by the day to taking the Switch 2 away from them, which I don't want to do. But when the console itself gets dropped on its face multiple times, there's a kind of a minor scratch on the screen already. It's not a big deal, but but at the same time, it's like, man, you gotta not do this. This thing's expensive, and Daddy needs it for work. There's a lot of weird, there's a lot of weird stuff wrapped up in video game hardware around this house in terms of how it gets treated and whatever. But they need to learn a certain amount of care and calmness for stuff that they don't currently possess. Like, they love to go nuts. These kids love to go nuts and get super wild. But it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like that's kind of the stuff that they need to learn sooner rather than later, because this stuff it's hard, man. I like getting video game stuff was relatively rare when I was a kid. It wasn't something, there wasn't that much to get, but it was, like it came slowly enough that, you took care of it. And so like their world is very different than that, right? Where they're literally surrounded by this stuff all the time. And so it's not something that they necessarily asked for and then got as a gift and are cherishing and treating well. It's just like, there's all this stuff's around, all this stuff's everywhere. All this stuff is we are literally surrounded by video games at all times. And so like, there's just a very different, if they have a very different level of access and a very different relationship to this stuff than I certainly did. And so that's, it's like teaching them like, hey, don't break this stuff. That's been, whatever, it takes time, they will have to break some things and suffer the consequences, I think, in order to truly learn. And hopefully it won't be anything too expensive. I don't know. There's still a bunch of the baby got in with a crayon and drew all over the TV, and I have yet to clean it up because I just look at it and just go like, I could clean it, but it will just reappear a month later. But yeah, that's just stuff like that. You're just like, yeah. Guess I got to clean that up. But yeah, that's how it's been going here. And I don't know, like it's been, my son is not liking Knack 2 as much as Knack 1, because Knack 2 is significantly more complex than the first game. Like every time I've touched Knack 2, I've been like, oh my God, this is like worlds better than the first game. It's crazy how much more, like there's a big sphere grid looking skill tree in that game. You're leveling up, you are falling, you are getting small and getting big at will to solve different puzzles. There are multiple attack buttons instead of just one. Like it has a parry. It has a fucking parry with like relatively generous parry windows. But it is still expecting you to do things that, like, my 4-year-old son was good enough at all of that stuff to play through most of Knack 1. But Knack 2 is maybe slightly beyond him, and so he has not been super engaged with it, which is interesting. But that has just led to him wanting to play. They're way into Pokemon Friends, which I don't know if you remember Pokemon Friends, because I feel like no one does. But it is the free-to-play Pokemon like puzzle game, like logic puzzle type games that came out a little while ago, within the last, like, let's say 12 months or so. And you can, it's free to play, but you can buy puzzles. You can buy some additional puzzles. And it's like stuff like, organize these mirrors so that the light bounces the right way. And then as you do better at the things, you get to make plush Pokemon. And then there's a whole like game in there of like, you make all these Pokemon plushies. And then there are people in town who are just static images who are just like, I need a Pokemon to help me study. It sure would be nice if I had a fire type Pokemon. And so you go into your inventory and pull out a fire type Pokemon plushie and give it to them. And then you get experience points to do nothing with. It's just like, it's a really, like, the game that they tried to hang around all of these different Pokemon themed logic puzzles, brain teasers, if you will. Like, this wouldn't be like, if this was like a Brain Age game, you'd be like, it's a little light for a Brain Age game. But it is like that style of puzzle in there, but they have made them all like Pokemon themed. It's really good. And like honestly, like that type of puzzle is one of my favorite, like, of things you could expose kids to. I feel like those types of logic puzzles and all that stuff is actually kind of cool. In terms of them like learning how to learn, if that makes any sense, but like how to stare at it and figure out like, oh, okay, there's 2 hidden boxes behind this, or I need to rotate this and think about this in 3 dimensions, or like that stuff I think is actually kind of fucking awesome. I was a big like brain teaser and riddle like dork as a kid, and so it's kind of awesome to see them kind of engaging with that thing. But yeah, they've been playing a lot of that, as well as Pokemon Pokopia. It's Pokopia, right? I actually don't know. I should go watch a trailer. Anyway, let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about that and some other video games after this. Hey, you got places to go. You got people to see. Sitting in a waiting room for hair loss treatment is not real high on the list. I get it. That's why Hims makes expert care accessible on your schedule, so you can skip the line and focus on feeling like yourself again. Hims offers convenient access to a range of prescription hair loss treatments with ingredients that work, including chews, oral medications, serums, and sprays. They've got doctor-trusted ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can stop further hair loss and regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You know, you shouldn't have to go out of your way just to get this stuff done. Hims brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. There's no hidden fees, no surprise costs, just real personalized care on your schedule. You can think of Hims as like your digital front door that gets you back to your old self with simple 100% online access to trusted treatments for real health concerns, all in one place. For simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/Jeff. That's hims.com/Jeff for your free online visit, hims.com/Jeff. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. They put out a Pokemon game that's kind of like Viva Pinata, but also like Dragon Quest Builders. And it's fucking incredible. I have not had too much time to play it because the kids have been commandeering the Switch 2 and playing some of that themselves, but you know, in the mix with everything else. But I've only really scratched the surface with it. But Pokemon Pokopia is like fucking awesome. Like it's you know, it is a game about you creating environments for Pokemon to live in. Much like Viva Pinata is a game about you creating environments for pinata animals to live in. And yeah. So the game is you're a Ditto, which is a type of Pokemon. This may be the creepiest part about it. I don't know if they get into this or if they figure out why this is the way it is, but conceptually, you're a Ditto who has decided to look like a person because Dittos can do that, and so you are walking around as a person, but really you're a Pokemon. And you're also kind of a weird looking person, but that's beside the point. You are kind of like waking up in an environment that is like not like this town's been destroyed. There's rubble. There's a sick Pokemon there that you've got to heal back to health, and then you kind of like go out from there. And it's like, okay, now we can craft things, and so you're kind of eventually you are building houses. You are building beds for Pokemon to sleep in. You are building like, okay, you're watering plants to make it like, okay, this Pokemon only wants to live in tall grass, but the tall grass needs to be wet, son. You got to wet that grass, kid. You know what I'm saying? And so you create a patch of grass, you water it, and then, hey, a Squirtle can live here. It's great. You learn different abilities. You know, you eventually learn cut, which is, I guess a very Pokemon game thing to do. And you can use that to kind of cut through lumber and other things, you know, but like you're straight up turning, you're getting logs turned into lumber so you can build stuff. And as you kind of build back this town, it becomes like, oh, okay, well, like we want to attract different types of Pokemon and we need like a humidity, or we need this, or we need that, you know, like different things that you need to change the environment drastically to try to attract different types of Pokemon, which again is an extremely Viva Pinata concept. again, mixed with the kind of Dragon Quest Builders sort of polygonal kind of block-based landscape and cube-based landscape. It is incredibly chill. The writing is incredibly fun. The Pokemon, you talk to the because since you're a Pokemon, you can just talk to Pokemon and they'll just be like, "What's up?" And they'll tell you what they need. They'll tell you if they're not feeling comfy, if you need to make it more comfy for them. It's just fucking awesome. Just yes, Pokemon love to say yo. It is real. The writing is really fun. And it is a very cute fucking game. And I think it's fucking awesome. I need to spend way more time with it because the kids have been, because I have been in a chokehold with another video game. But that is a very great experience. It is just like so well, like again, the writing is fun. The objectives are entertaining. Like it is oftentimes very Viva Pinata coded, and we need one of those as a society. We need something that is a little more, we need some more Viva Pinata-esque things in our lives. And so like that to me is the clearest touchstone in that thing. It's just like, oh yeah, okay, I need to make a little patch of place. And once I do that, if there's this many, that's if you have not played Viva Pinata, like that is that game, dude. Like it is very much like, oh, there needs to be this many tiles of water in your garden for this type of pinata to move in. And so it is literally all about like completely terraforming your space in order to get these characters to move in. And this Pokemon game is exactly that. The Pokemon don't fuck. So, it's a little different on that front compared to Viva Pinata because the Pinatas be fucking. That fudge hog gets busy. Nonstop. Whether you like it or not. I need to play more of that. Yeah. It's fantastic. But it has taken a back seat to Marathon, which is out now finally after delays and just the different I don't know, like the last year or whatever, or like it's crazy. Marathon is a great fucking video game. Marathon is There was some things that happened as I've been playing more and more Marathon every night. I get it now, I think. I understand, like I don't this game did not make me like Arc Raiders. In fact, it made me like it less. But I think I understand why people play Arc Raiders as much as they do. If nothing else. It feels so fucking good. And they made different choices in this game than a game like Arc Raiders made, and certainly a game like Escape from Tarkov makes, and like Delta Force has a lot of that. It's certainly, even like a Hunt Showdown or whatever. Like they're kind of, they're splitting the difference on some of these concepts in different ways than some of these other games do. But the important, probably the most important part about it is that it feels great. The movement and it has different character classes, so there's going to be kind of different options for movement depending on who you pick. But I think a lot of the movement feels fantastic. A lot of the character class abilities are really interesting. And I think they found like a good way to just kind of like, I don't know. They've facilitated an environment, at least for me, And maybe some people got this in out of Arc Raiders or whatever. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that this is the best one of these and everyone should be playing this one over the other one. I do think that there's enough of a difference between them that like you see why some people might be drawn to one over the other or whatever. But for me, it comes down to just like they've created an environment where it becomes very easy. Or it became very easy for me to let go. And it's the thing that I think makes these games, just conceptually even, difficult to kind of deal with. And it's that idea of, if I die, I lose X, Y, and Z. I've got loot in my inventory. So that's the loop of the extraction shooter, if you will. The basic idea is you get stuff. You put that stuff on your person, you go out and get shit done. If you die while getting shit done, anything that you had on you is gone. Other people are stealing it, it is being left behind, whatever. It's gone, you're dead. You are reborn, and you have whatever is left in your vault or whatever. And so you can take that out and go on another run, or they have what's called sponsored kits. If you ever want to just go with like no risk or lower risk, I guess I would say, you could take one of these sponsored kits, and the sponsored kits are okay. You still have like an effective weapon. You don't have as many bullets as you could have if you loaded up with your own shit, but the sponsored kits feel like they are relatively effective. And so you never feel like, and this is, I think, the big difference for me is I never once felt like I have nothing. I can't even get out there and get anything done because I'm so far down, like there's just no way through, It always felt like, okay, I just lost a bunch of shit. Whatever. Easy come, easy go. None of the shit that I got actually matters all that much anyway, in terms of like guns and ammo and those types of like gameplay based attachments. There's stuff you collect to buy upgrades with that when you lose those, you go like, ah! But like the guns themselves, they come, they go. And so letting go of that, which I think Marathon is built in such a way that I think makes it, at least it made it a lot easier for me to let go of the loot thing than some of the other games. That is the difference maker. That is the thing of like, okay, yeah, all right, fine. If I die and I lose my stuff, I have mostly laughed when I have died and lost all my shit, because I'm like, yeah. You know why? It's because I fuck up every time. Every time I take my good shit, every time I go like, okay, let's take it, let's be serious. Let's equip the good stuff, and we're going to go out there, we're going to get shit done. I get a little too cocky because I'm like, oh, I have 2 pips of shield instead of 1, so I'm fucking invincible. And then I get smoked because I step out a little too far and just get fucking smoked. When I have the sponsored kits, which is like, it's a gun, it's a shield, it's this, it's that, it's like real basic stuff. Fuck it, man. I'm free. If I die, it's okay, but I'm not going to die because I'm going to play more carefully. The other thing about Marathon, and this is my experience as a solo player, I've almost exclusively played the game solo, though I'm starting to dip my toes into playing with people. It is extremely fucking cutthroat. It is on site. It is when you see other players, you are shooting. I don't care how fucking far away they are. You are looking and going, oh, fuck them. And you are fucking shooting them. There is no, and in some ways, this takes some of the anxiety and the social anxiety out of it in kind of a weird way. Because there's a lot of negotiation possible here where you could be like, is that person going to jump me, or are we just going to, because we both have jobs we're trying to do, are we both going to just go try and do them and stay away? The answer is never fucking yes, we're going to be cool. The answer is no one is cool. The answer is I need to shoot that motherfucker right fucking now. And it takes all of the guesswork and all of the anxiety out of that interaction. You're not sitting there going like, oh, if I had a mic, could I have talked that person down? No, you have a fucking gun. Shoot that motherfucker. Take his shit. Fuck that guy. And that is the thing that like Arc Raiders, you know, a lot of the stories about Arc Raiders have been like, oh, solo players are skewing towards being more friendly, and so there's a lot of, you know, it's a lot of people working together against the AI and doing all this stuff, and when people play as teams, it's a little more PvP centric and a little more this and a little more that. And so my early hours with Marathon were very like hand wringy, like, I don't know, should I be shooting these people? And like, oh, I hesitated, and that person just turned and saw me and shot me. And I was hesitating because I was wondering if that person was going to shoot me. They bred the hesitation out of me. I shoot them. And then I run up to them and I fucking stab them. And that's it. And that is super exciting and extremely fun. People go down pretty quickly. With the kind of low level loot and stuff, like you don't survive very long, and your ability to heal up mid confrontation is relatively limited. And so it leads to these scenarios where like you only have a couple of decision points here. You know, there's only a couple of spots where this fight branches in ways that might give you the upper hand or let you take it back if you got shot first. And that's the movement abilities. Thief has a grappling hook you can use to, you know, you could grapple away and get behind somebody and do them like that. The Vandal has a really powered knee slide that you can use to kind of like boost past someone and kind of change the angle of attack in a way that's going to take them a second to go, oh, wait, fuck, and that might be the difference in you putting them down. There's a class that can turn invisible, which is what everyone plays. It's not like I don't know what fucking planet these people are from. Like it's just active camo. You can still see them. It's just a little smear of pixels instead of a full silhouette. If they're far enough away, you might not be able to see them. But that also means if they're shooting at you, they're not going to kill you because you're far enough away that it's like you're gonna go, oh shit, they're shooting. Okay, I'm gonna run behind this, and now I know that they're up there. And I'm going to get closer and fucking stab them. And so like that's a really everyone is choosing the invisibility thing right now, and I just look at it and go like, I don't know, like this is not. I didn't just start playing video games. I know what active camo looks like in a fucking video game. And I'm going to shoot you. But the one advantage it does give them is that you don't always, so sometimes some of the AI, some of the robots that are there, some of them can turn invisible as well. And so there is a moment where you're like, I don't know if this is a player or not. The good news, it doesn't matter. You want to kill them both. And so you gun them the fuck down. When you're playing with a team, there's a lot of team makeup stuff you can do. There is a medic class that, you know, you can res someone from a distance and all this other kind of cool shit. And so the team dynamic is a very different game. And I've heard it described as a lot more chill. Not to say that you're not also fighting other teams and doing all this other stuff, but it is much more a romp. It is much more, all right, the three of us are just getting out here and just fucking get whatever happens, baby. And then like you're out there kind of doing your thing. But a lot of that is facilitated by just how good the game feels, just how good the guns feel. Like I don't like, there are weapons that are definitely doing like people are doing nasty work with shotguns in this game. And it's fun to watch that stuff happen because it's just ridiculous. But like, you know, but I never feel like, I don't feel like I've picked up a bad weapon. I don't feel like I've picked up a weapon and been like, oh, this is completely non-viable. As you kind of get deeper into the game and start, you know, kind of selecting the loot that you're looking for and going like, okay, I'm going to store these shotguns and these LMGs in my inventory, and this is the stuff I'm going to use, and that, you know, like you do obviously start kind of tiering up and getting, you know, kind of better shit that is going to make you A, more survivable, and B, it will kind of give you a leg up. It is a case of like these weapons are better equipped for certain situations than others. But what I'm saying is that the floor doesn't feel broken. The floor doesn't feel like I'm completely fucked here. The floor doesn't feel like it's impossible for me to win a gunfight. The floor instead feels like I need to be extra careful. And that's why playing solo is so much fun, because it is so tense. It is a headphone game. It is a game where you are sitting still and listening for footsteps and going like, okay, I think that's AI. Those are robots. They're moving really slowly. They're moving at a constant pace. I think that's a robot on patrol. A skittering footstep that stops and starts, that's a player probably. You're like, okay, there's a player somewhere here, probably right above me. We need to go up there and kill them before they come down here and do it to us. And so it's very tricky. It is extremely, again, like playing solo is extremely tense and extremely fun. And then all of that is set in a world with like really fascinating lore, and they have all these different corporations that you're taking on contracts for, and they all have this big codex full of stuff, and you're kind of meeting the different operatives that run those corporations, and hearing bits and pieces of story, because this is still a marathon game at the end of the day. This is still a game that is set, like 80, 87 years, however many years after the events of like Marathon 2. And so like they're not explicitly giving you a ton of like full-on story cutscenes or whatever, but they are peppering the game with a lot of lore, and they've added more to that. Like there's an ARG running now that will eventually lead up to the first kind of like raid or whatever, the next kind of big mission-based thing. There are a bunch of terminals in world that just kind of turned on one day after being off, and you look at them and they look like the terminals from the old Marathon games, and you go, these don't do anything weird. One day they started doing something, and you're like, oh shit. And they're in pairs, and so you find one and it has a map on it that looks like the map from the original Marathon, which is very good. And then you go to the spot on the map that it is talking about, and then you hear a little bit of dialogue, presumably from Durandal, the rogue, the first AI to go rampant in the pantheon of Bungie having games about AIs that go rampant, basically. And so that is leading up to what will be the Cryo Archive, which is their, kind of, it seems like it'll be more like a raid-based encounter from the limited little bits they've said about it, and that'll be rolling out sometime later this month. But they've created a situation where me, a person who played the Marathon games but didn't really, like whatever, they were fascinating because they were first-person shooters that existed on the Mac. And as someone who was working for a magazine at the time, we used the Mac to make the magazine. So that was the only place I had ever, like at a Mac Quadra fucking something or other. And so I remember playing them and just being like, yeah, I don't know, these are not as good. Like just there are things about them that look neat. There are little details about the gameplay that were maybe a little ahead of their time compared to some of the games that were coming out for DOS-based machines at the time. But like it was just a strange feel. It just didn't look right. There was just stuff about the UI that you're like, it was undeniably a fucking Mac game, And it's one of the best Mac games because of what Mac games used to be back then, and perhaps still are. But nonetheless, it was like that and Spectre VR, and I guess Dark Tower or something. But like that's the holy trinity of Macintosh gaming. And so those games never really, like I played them then and was just kind of like, okay, I don't know, that's interesting. It's weird that these games, and I think Marathon 2 did come out for Windows machines. They did bring the sequel out. But I found myself like reading all of the lore and kind of refreshing my memory on like the actual story of Marathon. You can go like those games are all on Steam now for free. They've been like source ported to modern machines, and so if you want to go play original Marathon and see all that shit, you totally can. I might recommend just reading about it instead. Instead of maybe playing through it yourself, because it's, you know, it is a early 90s, it's an early 90s era first person shooter that actually came out in the mid 90s, but it came out for the Mac, so who cares? Like, I guess it's not to be too shitty about it, but like original Marathon, those games were like, fucked up. I don't know. But they Bungie, say what you will about Bungie, the highs and the lows of their development history or whatever, they have always been good about building a world. They've always been good about like filling a universe with like a lot of really interesting fucking nouns. Like they do real good proper nouns over there. You know, your guilty sparks and all the reclaimers and this and, you know, like all that shit. They've been pretty good about that over the years. And I think there's a lot of that in the original Marathon as well. And so seeing the ways in which new Marathon, a game that like on the surface is just like, I don't know, this is like a multiplayer focused shooter and this is like so far away from what Marathon is. And actually, it's not that far off. And when you think about the state of things as they were left at the end of the original Marathon games, and you think about where this is picking up and how many years have passed since then, it's actually really fucking fascinating that they've gotten to this point. Because the core concept here, the core conceit of current Marathon is that you're a consciousness somewhere in some fucking server rack somewhere. You know, and your consciousness is transmitted into these shells. The character you're playing is a shell. Your consciousness is transferred into it, but it can only be in there for a limited amount of time, which is why you have to extract. And you are going to this failed colony and trying to figure out what the fuck happened. And there are different corporations that have different questions about what the fuck happened. There's the food corporation that is New Caloric, that they want to know, like, hey, we sent a bunch of food with them. How come it didn't work? Like, what happened to the, like, it seems like they were unable to grow food there. What the fuck happened? We need you to find a bunch of documents, and you need to figure out like what, like, scan all these terminals and figure out what happened to the food. And then you've got there's one of the corporations is focused on, they don't like the military organization that is like running things there. And so they're just like, we think it would be cool if you went there and just fucked shit up. And then there's one corporation that has a bunch of fucking religious overtones about like, we think you should kill the other players. And so like they're very much the PvP faction that gives you 50 points every time you stab a dude to death. And you know, and all of the writing around that stuff is all super ridiculous. And then you get the worm people. It is, you know, this stuff. And so I think a lot of that is super engaging, and I think helps fill in a lot of the blanks for a game that, like, I think without that stuff would maybe feel a little bit plain, but you would just be like, oh, this game feels really good, but like, why am I doing this? They've filled in that reason. They've found really good ways to justify why you're doing this, what you're doing, why you're doing it again, why you are dying and going back in. Like they've written and created a version of this world. They've advanced the Marathon world in such a way that facilitates this entire game really, really well. And you're finding those little bits of lore as you go, and some of it's just like fun. You're just like, oh, I found a drinkable cheeseburger, you know? And there's a little bit of lore in the codex about drinkable cheeseburgers that is very good. But all of that comes back to, you know, like, this is like, as a game you are playing And the moment to moment of that play, I think, is very, very sharp. It doesn't feel necessarily like Bungie's other games. Like, I think that there's a lot of comparison points where you can point to concepts from other Bungie games, but I think that also extends to a lot of other types of games, ultimately. And so, like, it's not something that I think, I've seen people try to compare it to, like, oh, well, if you played a bunch of Destiny PvP, you're going to do this. Like, no. I played a bunch of Destiny PvP and never fucking liked it. It was never good. The pace of it, just everything about that stuff was never good. It was something you tolerated because you were trying to get very specific types of loot. And you're like, well, I need to go do this because Lord Shax has the armor I want this week, or, whatever fucking bullshit, right? And so you're like, I guess I'm fucking doing Trials of fucking Osiris again. Someone drag me through it. This doesn't feel like that. There are analogs, like there are guns in there that you look at and go like, oh, this looks a whole lot like the fucking Mida multi-tool, or this looks like this, or like there are certainly comparison points. But this is not Destiny. It is certainly not Halo. And more importantly, it's not Arc Raiders, and it's not Escape from Tarkov, and it's not Hunt Showdown. And I think that they have made calls on this game. They have split the difference in very different ways than other similar extraction shooters. They have found some of their own solutions to some of the problems with those games in terms of just like getting you to, again, let go a little bit of some of the loot and realize that, like, hey, you're just going to lose this stuff. It's fine. Like, eventually, when you are much higher level and you have invested a lot of time into curating your vault, those things will hurt a little bit more as you're losing that stuff, but you'll also be much more capable as a player with the stuff that you have. And as such, as long as you're not a fucking idiot, you should be able to make it out alive. It's got a lot of crazy fights around the extraction points as well. At least some of the time, because like, so as you're playing, you'll have like, I think it's like 25 minutes, 30 minutes tops, but 25, 30 minutes, in world. And, after I think the first 5 minutes elapse, the first extraction points appear. And when those get used, they are used and they're gone. And more will pop up later, and even more will pop up again after that. And so there is sort of a situation of just like, okay, is it time to go? Did I complete my objective? Do I feel like there's more loot to be gotten here? Should I be running around trying to find more stuff, or should we just get out with what we have? And when you go activate that point, it takes a while to charge up. And then on top of that, like once it's charged, a ring appears, and you need to then stand in the ring for a full 10 seconds before you will finally extract. So you can hide off to the side while it's charging. You can activate it and then run away and be like, ah, fuck, and wait and see if anyone else comes to try to smoke the people that are trying to escape. And you can kind of, keep an eye on it from a little bit of a distance and try to figure out like, okay, what the fuck is what do we do? But you still have to stand in that ring for 10 seconds and extract. And so there are plenty of moments where you're like, okay, I see someone activated that, because it shoots a beam of light up into the sky, so someone has activated it. And you're like, okay, if I go over there's definitely going to be a person there trying to get out. And that means I could murder them and take all their shit. Or at least try. And so that's pretty good. They've created a slew of mechanics and items and things that'll, help you in a variety of ways. Like the smoke clouds are really effective. But there's also like thermal scopes and classes that can see through the smoke. And there's like counters to counters to counters if you want to try to play that way. And I think that just makes everything feel dangerous. At the end of the day, you have things at your disposal that will help in, let's say 70% of the cases of other players or what else is going on. But if someone is playing a specific class and they're spec'd a certain way and they have this and they have that, they're going to see right through the bullshit you're trying to do, and then you're fucked. And then you've got a fight on your hands. And I think like that becomes very thrilling. That becomes very thrilling. And I don't know, man. It is some of the most fun I've had with a game in a pretty long time. And that's why it's shocking to me. Like, it is very much not the type of game, because I played Arc Raiders. I tried to play Arc Raiders, and I think for me the big difference is I think that they have the shooting. I don't like any of the combat in Arc Raiders enough to keep playing it. At the end of the day, the guns, how you fire them, the tools at your disposal, I don't like the way that stuff operates all that much. It's fine for what it is, but it doesn't feel great. Marathon feels great. And I think that is probably the most, that is the thing that is pushing it into kind of a different type of territory. Ultimately, this game is not going to be for everyone, because it is a very specific type of thing. But it's given, especially playing solo, because solo is so much more tense. Like, it is giving me the same type of tension, and like that horror game mentality of like early PUBG. Like, it is pushing the same buttons in terms of just like, oh my god, I can't fucking believe I got away with that shit. As that did in its first like 6 months or whatever of existence. Yeah, it is I am thinking about it all the time. Like in a very weird kind of vague sense. Not necessarily like, oh, I need to plan to do this, but like it is a game that has been on my mind pretty directly since it came out. How do I feel about them doing seasonal wipes? That's kind of a thing with this genre, is that, Arc Raiders does something very similar. I assume some of the other games in this space are doing it. But yeah, they will have a season that is going to last like 3 months, and then they will wipe it. I think how I feel about seasonal wipes depends on how they approach it. Because I think that if they change things up, I think there's a real opportunity for them to be bold on their on what they do season to season. And I think that there is an opportunity for them to make like really interesting changes from season to season. And so if they do a thing where, hey, we're doing our seasonal wipe, and then it's just the exact same skill trees and exact same stuff over again, that will be a bummer. But if they wipe and they go, okay, along with the wipe, we have like, there's now another faction, or now there's another this, or now the skill trees have been retooled and reorganized in ways that kind of rebalance aspects of the game. I think that sounds very interesting. Because the other thing that can happen, and this is the reason that I think these games have these wipes to begin with, there is that feeling of like, as players get better and die less often, you eventually end up in a situation where everyone's got good shit. And so your response to that can be, okay, we're going to make even crazier stuff next season to compete with the stuff that everyone already has, and you end up in kind of a power creep sort of situation. Or you wipe it and say, okay, all right, we're going to reset everybody back to a base level, and skill will win out yet again. And I think that is a more interesting way for them to go. So I guess we'll see. Like the answer ultimately is we'll see how their resets end up going. Because I think there's a ton of potential there for them to do something really neat. and I think that could be a difference maker. Yeah, there is a trace system. There's a system in place that means that if a weapon changes hands X number of times, it eventually kind of turns into money. Like weapons kind of fall apart or whatever concept you want to apply to that. But as weapons get passed from player to player, through a player getting killed and whatever else, like, you know, a notch comes off of that gun, eventually it will completely go away. And so that seems like a system in place to kind of prevent extremely top tier loot from being in the game forever, I guess, which is interesting. I don't know that I don't know, you know, how that is in practice or how that ends up going in practice, but that's an interesting idea. All right, am I saying that every gun has a story? Yes, Bungie finally did it after getting us all in a room and telling us that every gun has a story for Destiny. They finally made good on it. No, I don't know that I would say the guns don't have stories, but your runs certainly do. Like, it's very it's a game that, like, if you're not playing it, you will probably get sick of hearing about it pretty soon. But there will be a group of people who are practically talking in code about, dude, I did this shit and then fucking did this and then fucking this motherfucker put fuck and like people are doing shit like there's a drone. There are a couple of there's a medical drone, but also there's the thief has a drone that you can actually use to steal shit out of people's pockets, which is a very funny thing to do to someone as they're trying to extract. If they're just standing in the extraction circle, you just like start stealing shit out of their pockets before they can disappear, which is a fucked up thing to do to someone. But like people are putting claymores onto the drones and then pulling Battlefield type shit of flying the drone at other teams and having it blow up, which is very cool. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of cool shit like that. Yeah, you know, I think a lot of it will come down to just like, hey, man, you know, like I was doing a mission, like it was a relatively easy mission in the grand scheme of things, but I was trying to solo it because no one I knew was online. And I had to do like 3 different things in a single run, you know, and one of those things was kill a commander, which is not impossible. It's just an AI unit, but it is one of the beefier AI units. It takes a lot of bullets to take them down. I was using starter kits because I'm stubborn. And like I had to, like, because the starter kits don't come with a ton of ammo, it is a situation where you're like, okay, like I need to kill some other robots and hope they drop guns, or maybe we can find a fucking weapons locker, which those exist, but they're few and far between, and there were not any near where I was trying to kill this fucking commander. And so it just became this situation of just like, I've got to make sure every bullet hits this fucking guy and does not die on his shield because he's got a big energy shield. And so it very quickly became positioning and like, I've got to whittle down all the 7 or 8 guys that are around him so that they don't get involved. And also hopefully that one of them drops a fucking gun or something. And then basically slice and dice this guy, like knee slide behind him and fucking get some stabs in and then run away before he can turn around and do any damage. And like, it was a dumb fight, but I won. You know, after a couple of minutes of shooting literally every bullet I had and being like, okay, if I need to run up and stab this guy to death right now, or this is over and I'll just fucking take more ammo with me next time, I guess. But I managed to get in that ass and stab him to death. And then he drops a key card or a shipping manifest, I think is what it is. And then you have to go scan a container. You have like 3 minutes to do that. But because I had already cleared out the entire area of everyone else, it was like, okay, cool. If another player had shown up in the middle of that, I would have been fucking dead. Like there's no... But also that guy would have killed me and gotten nothing because I shot every bullet. I had the starter kit gun. I had nothing to fucking get. But killing that guy, he dropped a fucking sick machine gun and a bunch of other shit that I took with me, and then I made it out. I didn't have to make it out. When you complete the contract, it completes. Exfiltrating was not part of that contract, so I was like, okay, cool, I won. Awesome. I did the thing I need to do. And then I was like, okay, now I have all this shit, though. This guy dropped a bunch of cool stuff. I should get out of here. I should get out of here right now. I should take these guns I just got and get out of here right now. And so, you know, it becomes like that mad dash of getting out and then making sure that you're, you know, not followed, or that there aren't people stalking out or staking out the extraction points and all of that. I think there's some work they need to do. Like, most of it's about like the equipment interface and equipping gear, equipping mods on the guns. There's stuff in there that you just look at and go like, yeah, this is not, this is bad. This needs work extremely soon. And so I think I've seen people from the team say kind of exactly that, of like, yeah, we're doing some stuff there. And so like that's kind of a thing. But I think it's, I don't know, like that's relatively minor in the grand scheme of things. But, you know, I guess, like, before I kind of give a recommendation of it, I do have to temper that, because I do think that there's just, like, there are going to be certain people who are not interested in this specific type of fucking PvP. But like I said earlier, I feel like I get it now. I think I understand why people compared games like this to Battle Royales, because that was never clear for me. Like, you know, I'm playing a bunch of Arc Raiders and people going like, oh, you know, it's just like another Battle Royale, but this. I was like, I get, like, in terms of, like, from a business perspective, why they think, like, oh, a big multiplayer game would compare to a Battle Royale in terms of player counts and whatever else. But, like, it's not, like, the gameplay is not the same. The objectives are not the same. But I see the similarities in terms of, like, there is a, again, there's a tension to the game. And that tension is, like I said, very similar for me to the way I felt playing PUBG in the early days of that. And I've never felt that level of tension with any other Battle Royale game since then, because they just became very, like rote is maybe a bit much, but, like, you know, like you know what that game is, you know what to expect. Like, there are moments near the end of a Call of Duty Warzone match where there's only 2 players left and you're like, oh shit, where are they? Like, you get a little bit of that, but, like, the early days of PUBG felt fucking fucked. I don't know. Like, just from a tension perspective, it was just like, there's never, this is crazy. And this to me feels like that. I feel the same way playing Marathon as I did playing that then. And I don't feel that way playing PUBG anymore, you know, with all the stuff that's been done to that game over the years and whatever. It just doesn't feel like that anymore. But the horror is there. The fear is there. And that to me is the where it becomes a more direct comparison. Or you could say, hey, it's like a Battle Royale, except sometimes you can bring guns with you. But if you die, you lose the guns. But ultimately, it's like, that's not really accurate either, because your goal isn't to kill every other player and be the last player standing, right? You go in, especially, you know, in Marathon, you go in with a contract. In Arc Raiders as well, you pick a contract of, like, here's the thing I'm working on. Here's the quest I'm trying to complete. I need to find 10 of these, and I need to shoot some of this, and I need to go up to this terminal and push this. And then you complete that, and you're like, okay, I can only select one of those, and it has to be selected before the mission starts. So I can't just go do something else unless I'm playing in a team and other players have contracts selected, and you can kind of make progress for their contracts and get some rep points as well. And so it kind of forces you to focus on a specific task, and you go in and you complete that task, and then you leave. And then you figure out what your next task is going to be. A lot of that can be governed by, because, you know, these tasks are for the different corporations. Each corporation has their own skill tree. And so you're looking at it and going like, okay, I need to be able to buy more shields, or I need to be able to unlock the ability to hold, you know, more rows in my vault or whatever. And so you can focus on, you know, earning rep for a specific faction that's going to get you what you need next. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's between the lore and the ties to the original Marathon and how Bungie kind of just tends to build that type of world. I think that stuff is endlessly fascinating and it's on my mind all the time. But then just separate from that as a goddamned video game, it's fucking awesome. And I never would have expected it. The closest I got, so I played the NDA beta thing. What was that, October or whenever that was? When they first showed off the kind of the changes to the art style and they started making changes and pushing it in a direction, I was able to play some of that. And that was much different from the public one they did that everyone completely shit on. And even then, you see the changes they made in a pretty short period of time. There was a moment there of playing it and going like, I think they might have fixed, I think they might, because I really did not like that first test they put out. I was like, man, fuck this. I do not want to fucking do this. This is not a type of game for me. But they added solo stuff. The solo stuff is not well fleshed out, I'll say also. In terms of like, they added the ability to play solo. If you say, hey, don't match me with other players, you will go into a game that is only other solo players, which is good because that otherwise you're taking on teams of 3 alone. And that's how the game was originally when they first started testing it out. I was like, fuck this. But that stuff back in October or whatever, and then the server slam again, it was this feeling of like, oh, dude, I think they're actually doing this. I think they're actually they might actually pull this off. Like they seem to be pushing in a good direction quickly. And so like I was certainly when they ran that first test, I was certainly not expecting them to pull it together. But they fucking did. Holy shit. There's still more work to do. Like I said, the solo stuff isn't fleshed out. And what I mean by that is like, I think there's a lot of gear in the game that will have specific stats and specific bonuses and you know, equip this thing. And it'll be stuff like when you revive another player, you'll get a bonus to this and this. And you just look at it and go like, that's fucking worthless to me. I would like to see more items in the game that feel like they are like, oh, if you're playing alone, you're going to get this. If you're doing this, you're going to get this, you know, like that. It feels like a lot of the items that do have kind of weird requirements or they only proc in certain cases. Like a lot of that stuff feels like it's built for team play, and the game still feels like it's largely built for team play. And so I would like to see them kind of further lean into some of the solo stuff because it is 2 very different types of fucking game there. Because playing with a team is not the horror show that playing solo is. And so I would love to see them further develop that because that's where, to me, that is where the hook is. Not just because like, oh, I'm antisocial or whatever that, but it's like that game is fucking rude when you're playing alone. And you have to be as rude right back at it. And it is... when you pull that off, when it comes together and you're like, yep, I did that shit. I fucked those guys up before they could do it to me. Or they tried to do it to me and I turned it around and got that. Like that stuff feels real fucking good. Like it's a stealth game. You know, it's such a different type of thing than when you're playing with a team. And so I would love to see them put more time into developing that aspect of the game and making the solo stuff feel like it is at least as equal to the team play. Because it doesn't quite feel that way right now. And yeah, I don't know, man. Like it's you know, it just kind of needs more stuff, but it has a lot of stuff right now. And so like I have been very happy going back into those levels again and learning the maps and learning where this stuff is and getting better at like that aspect of the game as well. And where I need to be and when. I think a lot of that stuff just feels fucking great. And I am shocked in some way that they pulled it off. or that they pulled it off in such a way that me, a person who is like just really not liked a game like this before, that it's working for me in a way that Arc Raiders never has. And the multiple times I've tried Tarkov has just been like, fuck this. Absolutely 1000% fuck this. It's fascinating that they've found a way to, to make something that feels different enough from the pack, to kind of make it all work. I don't know. I'm interested to kind of see how it goes for them, But this is a game that I went back to mouse and keyboard for this. Like, I started playing on a controller, because that's just how I play most games these days. And the thing I found was, there's no problem with aiming. Like, you can hit your targets. Like, sure, they're mobile, they're nimble, but like, you can use the right stick. It's not a big deal. So mouse and keyboard is not necessarily something that you do so that you can aim better than players on controller. For me specifically, it was, if I get shot from the back, the right stick can only turn around so fast. And I'm sure I could crank up the sensitivity, but then I'll have trouble aiming and all this other stuff. So I was like, so it just became strictly out of a feeling of, I want to be able to turn around faster so that I can shoot back. and for me, like, yeah, it almost needs a Resident Evil fucking 180 fucking spin option or something, man, because you just and yeah, the inventory management and stuff like that is easier with a mouse than it is moving their kind of virtual cursor stuff, which I think that stuff is fine. It just takes longer, and so a mouse is definitely better for just like raw inventory management type stuff. And so, yeah, I don't know. I grabbed you're going to get a system noise here, I think, as I unplug this. I have multiple keyboards hooked up to this PC now. I have 1.5 keyboards. This thing, I bought this a while back. I've talked about it when I got it. It is the Fury Cube M30HE. It is a Hall effect keyboard. And I bought this, I don't know, was it 6 months ago or something like that, just because the concept just seems so crazy. It is just the left half of a keyboard. It stops at the letter G. And doesn't go any further than that. It does not have a Windows key on it. But it does have extremely sensitive and settable, configurable activation points for each key. It also, since it is Hall effect, it is, you can use it for your snappy tappy, but also for your rappy tappy. Which means if you're using A and D to strafe left and right, when you hold down D and push A, it will start moving you in the other direction. Like, basically, whatever key you've got pushed in deeper will take precedent. And so you can kind of juke left and right a little bit. This is the keyboard. This is the style of keyboard that gets you kicked off of CS2 servers. There are a handful of companies making keyboards like this now. And this one is just the left half of a keyboard, because really that's all you need for doing video gaming. And so I just kind of bought it on a whim, like off AliExpress or something like that, back before the tariffs fucked all that up. And yeah, I don't know. It's I don't know that the specific Hall effect. I don't know that the juking back and forth, the key, the SOCD style key stuff is helping me directly. I don't think that's a big deal. At least it has not felt like a big deal so far. But that is the half of keyboard I am using to play Marathon with, and it feels real nice. That game feels real nice on a mouse and keyboard, and these keys feel real nice to press. But it is a game like that is the like peeking and popping out around a corner and taking your shots and getting back. Like, that is very much a viable, if not necessary, strategy in Marathon, especially if you're fighting AI, because they'll just like stare at you. So you can just like pop out, get some shots, pop back in while they return fire, pop out, finish them off. If there's multiple targets or they're especially close, they will try to close the gap on you, and they will throw some grenades or whatever. But but yeah, this keyboard's real silly, but it's been serving me quite well for the past couple of nights since I made the switch from controller over to mouse and keyboard, specifically for Marathon. And so I've just been leaving it plugged in, and so I can use either keyboard to type with. It's like I have a split keyboard now without having a split keyboard, because this left half is just like over off to the side. Is there one of those so this Fury Cube also makes full keyboards if you want a full keyboard like this. I don't need one. I already have a full keyboard that I like, but I wanted to try this. I wanted to try when I started reading about hey, these keyboards and the weird kind of tapping you can do, like the Valve is now kicking, they're not VAC banning people for it, but they are kicking people off of CS2 servers, I think automatically if you are strafing too fast or whatever. And so I wanted to see that in action. I was like, that just seems like such a weird concept. We talked about it a while ago. It's like this idea of like the analog keyboard or something, right? The idea of a keyboard that was just more capable than the standard keyboard. Why doesn't that exist? And it turns out it kind of does, but it doesn't. It's not analog in the sense that I can push it down part way and move slowly. It's not quite like that. So it's more about like, how do you want to set the actuation point on the keys, and how sensitive do you want the keys to be, and whatever else. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what that says about Marathon, that that I reached a point with it where it was just like, I need to take this more seriously. This is not like, I need more. But that is the thinking that it led to. So yeah, I don't know. Like it's a really fucking neat game. And I love the way it looks, and just the kind of visual stylings. I think there's aspects of it that like you could argue that parts of this art style, parts of this aesthetic kind of specifically, not necessarily the character designs or whatever, but like the skins, the decals, the like all of the way that they doctor up their guns, and some of the characters and the skins, and a lot of that. Like there's a lot of stuff there that you look at and go like, this probably would have been a much bigger deal about a year ago. This kind of vaguely like health goth style that they've gone for. I think it works. But again, I think if we were 1 or 2 years earlier, it would have been a little closer to the, I don't know, when health goth was still a thing, or techwear, or whatever, like all of that sort of stuff. Like the I guess for whatever it's worth, like the looks that they have in this game seem to be inspiring cosplayers. I don't know how much that matters. Like what does that say about a game's popularity or whatever? But like I've seen a lot of Vandal cosplay specifically already, and that's interesting. And yeah, I don't know, man. Fucking Marathon. They made a new Marathon game. It doesn't even run. They didn't even make it for the Mac. Ridiculous. Port this to the Pippin. What are we doing? But it is firing on a lot of cylinders. Not quite all cylinders, but it is. They are fucking definitely onto something, and I think they've got a really good opportunity here to, I think, blow this genre open for an audience of people that maybe tried it already and were like, fuck this. That's exactly where I was. Like having played other games that you would call extraction shooters and all of that other stuff, there's definitely like, fuck this. Like this is not a type of game I want to play. I just don't want to fucking do this. And now it's all I can fucking think about. It's fucked up. It's fucked up, man. It's fucked up. But that's where we're at with it. So I don't know. I'm very excited about it. and it's yeah, I don't. It's occupying a lot of my thoughts at the moment, and it's become the game that I can play some of every single night. Not necessarily hours and hours of it, though lately it's been that. But it is absolutely a game that's just like I feel like I want to spend a whole lot of time. Yeah, it's and it's not even like specific thoughts. Like I'm seeing like the TikTok algorithm has fucking become all marathon videos for me, and so there's stuff there that I see that is very tactical. There's stuff there that I see that's just like, oh shit, if I played as Thief and I used the grappling hook this way, I could fucking do this and fucking stick these fuckers. And like, there's like that aspect of the game. But like that's not what's occupying. Like, I'm not sitting here thinking about like, and then if I equipped this and I could do like, it's not necessarily that type of like gear synergy kind of thing. Like, you know, it does have that, but that's not the thing that's keeping me thinking about it. It is like, okay, it is the world of Marathon. It is the, like, these shells, these runners, this consciousness that transmits into this, and it is the ties back to original Marathon. It is the lore. It is the drinkable cheeseburgers. It is the watching the creepy fucking worms weave the shells. It is like the stuff they have done to build that world just stays on my mind. And that's yeah, I don't know, like that's not something. It's funny because like you think about it, go like, oh, that's actually what Bungie is really good at. Classically, as a developer, they have been really good at like building those types of worlds and thinking about that type of stuff and whatever. But like that they're I guess, like, you know, you think about this as a multiplayer game and you just go like, yeah, I don't like, you never really consider that type of lore or that type of world building or whatever else, but like that is what pushes this game into a much more fascinating place than it could be otherwise. So, you know, that stuff matters. That stuff matters a lot, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's Marathon. It's out now. I don't know, was it like $40? It's $40, and there's an edition you can get for more that just comes with like cosmetics. They're selling cosmetics. They made a change to like how much premium currency you got for buying. Like, it was one of those things where it's like you buy $10 and worth, and then you get 20 extra credits, or, you know, whatever it is. Lux, they call it. Lux is the name of their premium currency. They made some adjustments there on the exchange rates for premium currency, I guess. And they've got a battle pass. The battle pass stuff is structured just like Helldivers. It's like a rewards pass, and you can go through it for free and unlock stuff, but there's a premium track on that as well, that if you buy the pass, then you get the premium stuff as well. But all of it's just kind of cosmetic stuff for the most part. There are some, and this is on the free side of stuff. On the free side of the battle pass, you'll find schemas, which are like, it's like it's an item that gives you the right to buy X number of a thing. So like if you find a schema and extract with it, then it's like, okay, in the shop, you'll find 5 of these guns now, and you can buy it from them 5 times because you found this schema, and then you need to find another one if you want to buy. Like, buying guns is foolish. Buying guns is foolish. I find. But there you can get easy access to higher tier items that way, and that stuff's kind of cool. You will eventually probably want to buy a gun or two, and that's not a premium currency thing. That's a in-game currency thing. So all they're really selling is cosmetics. And there was something broken about their battle pass where it kept giving, like, there's a separate currency you get to spend on the battle pass, which is, I think, just like I think that is also how Helldivers does it. But there's some bug where it kept refilling your currency. Silk is the battle pass currency. And it kept refilling my silk every time I launched the game. And so I bought everything on the battle pass on the first day. So I don't know I assume that that's a bug that they probably fixed. They did not take all the stuff away, so I don't know what if they intend. That would be kind of a bummer. It's a bummer either way. But there was some kind of bug there that seemed. I'm not the only person that happened to, but sort of a weird thing there. But yeah, I don't know, man. They're off to the races with Marathon. You should check it out. I assume that they will probably, if you didn't play the server slam, it's the sort of game that I have to imagine they're going to do some kind of like weekend thing before too long here. But I would say give that thing a look. Will it be the last PlayStation 5 game on PC? No. Keep in mind that all of the PC games, all of the PlayStation games on PC stuff is largely centered around single player games, and that multiplayer games will largely still. The multiplayer games need player counts. Multiplayer games need to exist on multiple platforms. Like they probably will not change anything there on that front. But their story driven single player stuff, that's the stuff they're walking away from. So you can play it on your phone or whatever. Let's take another break and we'll come back and we will get into the news after this. There are a million different things to think about when you're getting your business up and running. You know, if you're doing a podcast, you know, it's like, where are we going to host this show? And do we do advertising? And what do we do this? Do we do that? A million little things. And then if you want to get into physical goods, that's a whole other thing on top of that. Okay, how do we build a storefront? How do we accept credit cards? Who even makes this stuff and who ships it? And you need to just kind of take some of those things out of the equation by partnering with a company that gets it done. That partner is Shopify. Getting Shopify on your side takes all of that guesswork and all of that hassle out of selling things online. You get started with your own design studio. They've got hundreds of ready-to-use templates. Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. They'll help you get the word out, too. Like you got a marketing team behind you. You can easily create email, social media campaigns, wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And, you know, best of all, Shopify is your commerce expert. They've got world-class expertise in everything, from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. They're the company that helps you get your goods out to the world. It's fantastic. It is so simple to get up and running. And if you get stuck, Shopify is always around to share advice with their award-winning 24/7 customer support. Tackle all those important tasks in one place. Inventory, payments, analytics, everything. There's no need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. Everything is in one place. It's time to turn those what-ifs into... with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Jeff. Go to shopify.com/Jeff. That's shopify.com/Jeff. All right, in the news, Nintendo is suing the United States government. Finally, right? When I first heard this, I was like, oh, finally, for all that shit that they did with the Pokemon. No, this is over tariffs, according to Aftermath.site, who was reporting on this. This is they are basically so the Supreme Court determined that the tariffs that the United States government has been collecting has been that is illegal, that was unlawfully done, and so it has created a situation now where some of these companies who had to pay a lot in tariffs are looking for theirs. Like, oh yeah, so all this money we paid you on importing all this stuff, that was against the law. Okay, we want all our money back with interest. And so, Nintendo has I believe, did Costco get in on this? Yeah, there's a handful of companies that are doing this. Nintendo has kind of joined the has hopped on the bandwagon here in an attempt to kind of get this money back. Of course, the tariff situation is super weird because, like, in response to the tariffs being deemed unlawful, the administration just said, "Okay, we're going to issue new tariffs then." And now there's new tariffs in place. It's still a bad situation. Obviously, it has not led to people going like, "Oh, thank God that's over," and now maybe we can start getting these prices back in line, and maybe we won't have to raise the price of the Nintendo Switch too. Like, no, it's just like, oh, okay, you're just like fucking shitting on the entire planet in as many different fucking garbage ways as possible. Piece of shit. Anyway, yes, this is something that kind of after that Supreme Court ruling, New York Judge Richard Eaton of the U.S. Court of International Trade determined that yes, all importers of record would be entitled to getting theirs, and that's kind of where we're at with it. We'll kind of see where this sort of ends up. It's a real mess. It's a real mess. I don't know. Like there was a while there that it seemed like there was going to be a window, and I was like, I'm going to go order a bunch of stuff off of AliExpress. I don't think that window was open long enough for me to get a bunch of headphones and weird controllers and whatever else. But yes, that is kind of where that stuff is at. There's a, kind of the full complaint is out there. And I am not going to read the entire filing that Nintendo has filed. But I am kind of looking for like it's like I think what they're looking for is like it's like reasonable court fees and money back with interest and yeah. In terms of what they're seeking. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Hopefully we see some relief from that, but I say hopefully we see some relief from a lot of fucking bullshit that's happening. Like the tariffs matter, and then all of this money stuff certainly matters, but there's so much more fucking horseshit going on. America's back in the school bombing business. Great. That's great. Right? Anyway, Xbox is in the news. GDC is this week, the Game Developers Conference. They have retooled that conference this year in some ways that, like, as they were like, now it's the Festival of Gaming, and you're like, I don't know what that means, but okay, sure. You rebrand it and then try to figure it out. But they have changed some of the ways that they present their different. They used to have tracks. And so if you worked in audio, there was a track of audio related talks that you would go to. They've tried to unify all the tracks and simplify the tiers of access, the people that go to the show, whatever. It's to you that is maybe not that important. But like the show just seemed very strange from the outside looking in. I opted not to go this year. I thought about it for a bit, but I was like, I went to DICE and like I think I'm good on interacting with other humans for at least another couple of months here. I can just hole up here. It'll be fine. So, in conjunction with GDC, the thing that happens at GDC is kind of the same thing that happens at DICE. If anything, it's kind of like part 2 of DICE in this specific way where everyone meets with everyone. If you're in the hardware manufacturing business for video game consoles, you're taking meetings with every single publisher. of note, and you're sitting them down and going like, here's what we're working on, here's what we're working on, oh cool, and what can we do together, you know, hey, maybe we do a co-marketing deal on this, and maybe we do this, you know, it's like a lot of deals of that nature get cooked up at events like this and events like DICE, especially now that E3 is not around, you know, like the Summer Games Fest is trying to have a little bit of something around that, trying to build some kind of industry focused stuff there. I don't know how well they're doing at getting everyone to come into town for it. It's some there are more and more people coming to town in that time frame, but it's not quite E3 levels of time of people. Anyway, you may remember that Phil Spencer has decided to retire from Xbox, and that they have a new CEO coming in, and or new president of Microsoft Gaming, whatever the exact title is. But she will be going out and meeting all of these developers for the first time. And what they're going to be talking about is their upcoming hardware. She said as much. This just seems like they needed to. This seems like they needed to change the conversation from, hey, they brought in this new person and she comes from the AI division and they're going to dismantle Xbox and shut it all down. And like a lot of the news coming out of this change has been very, let's say, dour. And so I get the impression that they probably just needed something they could put out there publicly that it will at least kind of change the topic of conversation a little bit. They've revealed no new information other than the code name for the hardware they're working on. They're calling it Project Helix. I don't think this is even the first time they've used Helix as a code name internally, but she got on Twitter or something and said like, yeah, it's the best of the PC and the best of the Xbox, and we're, you know, whatever the quote was. But basically what we've been saying for months now about this new hardware is that it was very much going to be a PC that could play Xbox games somewhere, somehow. And yeah, I don't know. They're going to go into GDC and have a lot of conversations with developers about what they're working on, and then the time frame and all of that. We'll see how much of that leaks. I don't know. You know, like I'm sure there will be opportunities for some of this stuff to leak, but it's early enough and the meetings are probably high level enough that it won't necessarily just turn into a message board post immediately. Unless you count the message board posts that have been hitting. There's been a lot of shit in the wake of all of this, whether it's the Project Helix kind of codename stuff or just like the Asha Sharma coming into the new role at Microsoft. And some of the kind of town hall talks they've given to the team. There's been just a lot of stuff that's had to be like kind of debunked. And there's even more stuff that's just kind of like floating around out there that like, it's hard to really, it's hard to say where this stuff will end up. But what has happened is a rumor started going around that Satya Nadella was in some town hall basically saying like that Xbox needs to get back on track and that they have a, quote, blank check to do so, which is ridiculous as a concept. But that, you know, that kind of started going around like, oh, they've got all the money they need to make the next Xbox amazing and all this. Honey, no. This is not how this works. And so Microsoft actually pushed back on this. Instead of just playing the, like, we don't comment on rumors and speculation, Kotaku saw that Frank Shaw, who is the chief communications officer over at Microsoft, specifically shot that down and said, Asha Sharma, there's a quote going around that said, Asha Sharma has my full trust and a blank check to revive Xbox and the trust of the fans, no matter the cost. And they're saying, no, that was not said at this meeting. And so like, I don't know, like there's like Xbox YouTubers or what, I don't know who's trying to like push that was said, but they very quickly shot that down. I mean, use your head. If this was a company that was willing to give anyone a blank check to get things done, they would have done it a while ago. there's nothing, and I think if I'm reading the situation internally properly, like there's a thing that happens, specifically around a lot of the Xbox talk of the last couple of years. There's a thing that happens where I think publicly a lot of people freak out about a lot of stuff that just doesn't matter anymore. And they get real sky is falling about stuff. And this is something that happened in the wake of them putting their games on PlayStation and the Tim Dogs of the world freaking the fuck out. Fuck Compton, he said. But you like all of that stuff, like internally there was a lot of like, yeah, no, this is the strategy going forward. This is, maybe you're not on board with it or whatever, but they're moving forward. To them, Game Pass has been making billions of dollars. To them, it's not like some dire like, last one out, shut off the lights. Like, the way people treat it on the internet is like Xbox is seconds away from shutting down because it's so bad over there, and so this and so that. And like, I look at it and go like, yeah, I mean, they're clearly not on the right track, or rather, they're getting there. They've always felt like they were getting there and never quite got there. But like the kind of doomsday scenarios that people play out online doesn't seem like it's something that's reflected internally. Like I don't think they're not out there doom and gloom about Xbox. They kind of never have been. Instead, it feels like they've been focused on like, hey, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We're not where we want to be, and we need to get there. And here's a strategy we're going to use to try to get there. And you've had some people that disagreed with the strategy, specifically around the multi-platform stuff, because you had a lot of people that were just like diehard, people that worked there for a long time that really believed in the hardware and whatever, that were maybe unwilling to admit like, hey, the time has passed. Like, hey, we kind of, this is not the place for us anymore. This is not the battleground that it used to be. And we're not super well equipped to fight it with what we have right now with the current Xbox hardware, right? And so you have those kind of internal struggles or whatever, but strategically, from the top anyway, it just feels like, okay, they figured out what their new North Star is, and they started moving in that direction, and you're either on board with it or you're not. So it's not some situation where you would bring in someone new and say, you got a blank check. Like, fuck no. This is not a company that can even afford a true blank check anymore, because all the blank checks got written to the fucking AI department. All the blank checks got written to Sam Altman. Or to buy Sam Altman's fucking IP, right? Like they emptied that gun already. And so, like the thing that's fucking has been slowly strangling Xbox, or has the thing that has been resulting in Xbox not necessarily being where anyone thinks it should be or wants it to be or whatever, has been this idea of, no, you need to be accountable. You need to run a business. You can't just go out there and blow money. Even the Activision purchase was something that they spent a long time thinking about and vetting and doing the numbers on. It wasn't just something where they just like from the hip were like, I heard Activision's for sale because Bobby Kotick's a scumbag. We should pick that up. It'll probably be cheap. Like it wasn't, like it came together quickly on that specific front, but like, dude, they didn't just go like, oh yeah, here you go, and dump that shit out there. It's just not how it works. And so anyone sitting there thinking that Xbox would have a fucking like blank check to go and build their next hardware is already kind of crazy. But that's just like one of the things. There's a lot of like weirder. Anyway, they went out there and they announced the Project Helix code name, and basically the short version of that is like nothing has changed. Like publicly facing in terms of things they've announced. This is them kind of like advancing it one step ever so slightly further and saying, okay, now we've given it a code name, and now we've used Xbox and PC in the same sentence yet again in a slightly more official way, so you can kind of tell where we're going with our next hardware. But it's not some dramatic change in news or whatever else. The other stuff, this seems like absolute fucking bullshit, but I don't know, man. Stranger things have fucking happened. Day one over at playday.one kind of has a list of things that I guess this is 4chan stuff. So, like, take it with a fucking, as many grains of fucking salt as you've got. But it's a lot of details that they claim are from like an Xbox developer portal. And they're talking about the device specifically, and some little bits and pieces of some of the rules around what you can and can't do with the new hardware as it relates to achievements and whatever else. But like they as they've already done with the ROG Ally X, it does sound like that they are looking at a machine that can kind of dual boot in a sense, or can convert from one mode to the other, rather. That you will have a game mode and a Windows mode. And there's some quotes from this, like, your game library carries over between games and Windows mode outside of many Xbox 360, and Xbox One backwards compatible titles, implying that you'll only be able to run those out of game mode, which I think probably makes some kind of sense depending on what they're turning on or turning off between the two modes. Some Xbox Series titles may run in Windows mode, but for best compatibility and experience, playing them in game mode is recommended. That sounds like something that would, by the time they release, would be shored up to an all or nothing kind of thing, as opposed to just going like, some of these Xbox games run here. I could see that being like, oh, if it's a Play Anywhere game, then technically you're running the PC game or whatever. But like, so here's there's some stuff in here that just sounds kind of fucking insane to me. Xbox Game Pass Core is required for multiplayer in game mode, but not Windows mode. Which Xbox Game Pass Core is not a current service that they offered. So that's kind of implying that they might change the name of Game Pass yet again, which they kind of just changed it. And so the implication there is that you would still have to pay for a service to play multiplayer games on an Xbox, but only when it's in Xbox mode. If it's in Windows mode, then no. And so we're getting into the weeds and stuff that this seems like it's probably bullshit, because I think this stuff is so far-fetched, and some of this stuff is so wrapped around services that they're going to have to make dramatic changes to, that I feel like if this is what they're going to do, they have fucked up already. But let's just talk about it. This stuff is probably not true. That's kind of where my head is at on this stuff. There was like another screenshot going around claiming that you will need Game Pass Core to play Steam and Epic games in game mode. Otherwise, you will have to use Windows mode. Which that to me sounds like hey, take this device and throw it in the fucking trash because you fucked up. So that's kind of why I'm looking at this stuff and going like, I don't think this is where they're headed with this. It just seems this seems like too far over the line, or rather, this seems like them trying to hold on to a service that like philosophically doesn't make sense anymore. Specifically, charging for access to online multiplayer games. And so like some of this is like, oh, you can only mod your games in Windows mode, which makes sense because anything running in Xbox mode would probably be some kind of UWP fucking hellscape anyway. And, like there's a lot of stuff there that might be kind of weird. Xbox will offer no support to developers if a Steam or Epic game is having issues in Windows mode. That's a PC game at that point. So yeah, why would Xbox do that? DRM activation limits in Steam or Epic titles will potentially be used once by both game and Windows mode, which seems to imply that game and Windows mode would be different enough from each other that an install might read the hardware a little differently, which sounds like a more dramatic departure for game mode than what they're currently doing with Windows 11. When they have the Xbox full screen experience and you kind of drop into Windows, like it's still, you're just running Windows the whole time. So if anything, if you could take that to mean, which again, the other stuff on this list seems dumb enough and crazy enough that you just look at it all and go like, this is probably all bullshit. But since it's been going around, let's at least talk about it. Like this is what when I look at this and you know, sometimes people ask like, what is it about a rumor that you look at that seems like a yes or a no or true or a false or whatever? And sometimes it's as easy as like, well, I heard some adjacent shit that either lines up with this or doesn't line up with this, right? In this case, that's not the case. But I do look at this and go, for a company that needs to kind of a hard reset with its fan base and needs to find reasons for its specific blend of hardware to exist, these policies seem to run very much against that. And so I look at this and go like, maybe this is where they're at now, and maybe this is a conversation that they did have at one point, because they're not going to want to give up all that revenue, right? They're not going to want to give up on the people who do pay them, but they've already been pushing away from the Xbox Live Gold thing. They rolled it all together under Game Pass to begin with, and so there's just kind of they have an off-ramp for the online multiplayer thing at this point. And I think that would be a feather in their cap compared to where PlayStation is at if they were to say, yeah, no, you can just play games online. And that's that. Now, the one area where I could see them wanting to hold on to it, or from a technical perspective, I could see them saying, actually, we still need to collect money to play these games, is specifically with backwards compatibility. Because those are games that already they are, you have to pay a fee to play those games online on an Xbox today. And that's probably not something that's just going to immediately go away. So will there be a transition period where they say, hey, for backwards compatible games, we are going to keep charging this fee because we've been charging it, but going forward, all this stuff, these are all PC games anyway. So like, we're not going to really stick to that. And will that be the way forward? I don't know. That's been something I've been thinking about off and on for a little bit. Is this idea of pay to play multiplayer stuff? Originally, when they formulated this, it was because they were trying to do a lot of extra things and trying to they were basically trying to create a lot of services for developers that would make it very easy for developers to get their games up and running, to make their online stuff happen. It was a lot of like tools that developers could use. And so you look at that and go like, oh, okay, so if Microsoft is taking on all of the cost of running these servers, and if Microsoft is taking on all of the costs of all the central services of matchmaking, they built their own matchmaking stuff. They wrote white papers about TrueSkill and all this, they built all of that stuff. You look at that and go like, yeah, I guess I see why they would think, okay, if we're going to build and maintain this, we need to be making some money off of it. You could argue that they make the money off of selling the games, but that's okay. You see why Xbox Live Gold was put in place when you think about the things that they were doing and what the landscape for multiplayer gaming on console was like then. It was a situation where like it was just fucked up enough and different logins and this and that, like I got my Resident Evil Outbreak login, Xbox Live is a very smart thing that they built. And the way they built it out for the Xbox 360, also incredibly intelligent and forward thinking on their part. But times have changed. Epic Online Services offers the vast majority of these things to developers without the costs associated with it. And so the things that Xbox Live did classically doesn't have the same value that it did anymore, especially in a world where the console you're building is literally a Windows machine where no one pays for any of that stuff. So I do think that they do have to find a way to transition out of this, but I could also see them saying, hey, we're actually not going to make any changes to the current Xbox because people are used to paying for it there, and we're not going to change a damn thing. And maybe that ends up having a lingering impact on backwards compatibility for these games, these older games going forward. I still think that there's a situation here for they could just kind of get away from this. And I think that would be, without knowing any of the numbers, right? Without knowing how much money they'd actually be walking away from here, it's easy to say, right? But I do think that they are in a situation where they want to win people over. They are in a situation where, like it or not, there will be competition with other hardware out there. And when we think about the system that they're probably building and the specs that they're currently at, this is likely to be a machine that will end up being more expensive than whatever the next PlayStation costs. And so I look at all of those things and see this is an opportunity for them to cut that fee and say online is for everybody. It's a PC. We can't, in good faith, there's no way for us to do this without it seeming very arbitrary and sleazy. And so it's time to walk away from it. To me, that feels like the only move. To me, that feels like the only option there. And so if they're going to try to stick some kind of fees around, like, oh, well, if you're in game mode, you can do this, but you have to pay for it. And over here, you can do this, and it's Windows. And so I don't know, man, it's Windows. Good luck. Like the answer to that question 10 times out of 10 is, yeah, I'm just going to run Windows. Unless this game mode has some massive performance increase or some kind of situation that makes it worth running that way. Why would you ever buy a game from Microsoft's store if they're going to impose an ongoing fee on you to play it online? You wouldn't. You would say, I'm just going to buy this on Steam and play it on the same device, but, quote, in Windows mode. So I think that there is a lot of stuff that they will have to figure out. And if this document, if this information that's been going around, again, this is all shit that came from fucking 4chan. And sometimes the shit that comes from 4chan, you look at and go like, this is absolute bullshit. And sometimes you see some shit that got posted there and you're like, oh, actually, that is extremely correct. So it's hard to know sometimes, right? I look at this stuff, I look at how far off they probably are with this and what they would be thinking about in terms of policies and what they would be thinking about in terms of just like, what hoops are we going to have developers jump through and what hoops are we going to have players jump through. And this feels written in such a way as to make it seem real bad, which creates two possibilities. One, this is absolute bullshit, or two, Microsoft is completely fucking themselves. Because if this is the sort of stuff that they intend to stick to, if this is the sort of stuff that they are telling developers, and maybe we'll have a better read on this, in one way or another after this week is over, because GDC will happen. This feels like them, like, just not taking this opportunity seriously. Or not taking their position in the market seriously, or not, this gets into the like, oh, okay, we're going to have a bunch of really pompous and bad policies for players, and that's a wrap from us in gaming hardware. There was another quote from Satya Nadella going around where he said, it was like, oh, gaming is always a thing, like basically kind of saying that gaming always has a place at Microsoft. We'll always invest in gaming. It was, sure. That's been taken in the context of talking about Xbox, but like, remember, like before Xbox existed 25 years ago, Microsoft does a lot of investments in gaming. They've been investing in DirectX as a gaming technology for years and years and years. They will continue to do that. Like Windows will continue to be an OS that will have some gaming specific tools in it, no matter what happens with the Xbox. If the Xbox division were to burn to the ground tomorrow, they would still say Microsoft will always invest in gaming. So that's not really a statement you can kind of take anything from and apply widely, because it is such a generic concept. It is still like oh yeah, Sidewinder controllers are back, or like whatever, right? Like they will, a significant percentage of their Windows audience wants to play games on that OS, and so yes, they will continue to have gaming evangelists inside the Windows team. They will, it's There's nothing. I don't think there's anything to be gleaned from that specific tidbit of info. But it does, like there was the bit from Seamus Blackley where he was one of the original Xbox leaders from 25 years ago, and he was saying, oh, it looks like they're he used the term palliative care. It's like, oh, they're bringing in Sharma to shut it down. Like they're gonna do this last thing and then just kind of like send it in for a landing, and try to give it like a soft landing as they get out of the hardware business. It's hard to really know, right? Because if they succeed, they'll keep doing it. If they fail, yes. If they do this and no one comes, if no one shows up, if they do this and it doesn't hit the numbers, then yeah. This is probably the last shot they have for dedicated Xbox hardware. But also, this is going to be the generation where they make this stuff into a PC anyway. So as far as off-ramps go, this will end up being one of the better off-ramps they could have chosen. However, the willingness to walk away from Xbox is always kind of a silly thing. Like Xbox has driven like it's not 50% or anything like that, but it's not an insignificant amount of revenue that the whole company brings in comes from Xbox. It's not something they're just going to they're just going to wake up one day and go like, we're done with that shit. Like they're going to try to hang on to it. They're going to try to figure it out. Xbox in some ways is still the best consumer brand they have in terms of like consumer facing mainstream audience, blah, blah, blah. Like Xbox is in some ways the best they've ever done. It's not where it was at its height, but hey, yes, that and IntelliMouse. Yes, naturally. The Zune. The idea of them walking away from it completely and sending it in for a landing or whatever, they would not go into this situation where they've already spent all this money in R&D and they are, approaching a ship date for new hardware. They would not go into this half-assed. They would not go into this going like, this thing's already fucked, and just follow through on it because they felt like they had to. But they would punch out now if that was something they were going to do. And it comes back to, it was like, this was stuff that like from even in the Bill Gates era, when the Xbox came out and it became if not a fixture of the living room immediately, like, it eventually became a very competitive device, either from a tech perspective or from a sales perspective, depending on which generation you're looking at. It was at a time when the idea of set-top boxes and having something that was hooked up to the television and the battle for the living room, all of that stuff was very valid. That's not necessarily the case right now. I don't know what's battling for the living room nowadays. It's like a Fire Stick or a fucking Roku or it's not, and half that shit is built into the TV anyway. And so like, it's just like what runs Netflix, all of it. Everything, all of these things run Netflix, so who cares? Like the underlying tech under a lot of those set-top boxes does not matter as much to people as it used to. But I do think there's probably still some element in Microsoft that still feels like we can't walk away from this. But make no mistake, man. I like... This does feel like it's probably their last shot at having something, having like a major hardware launch with the Xbox branding on it and whatever else. Like this feels like if they don't get it done now, then at some point the Xbox brand does become like, it's a Fire Stick and it just says Xbox on it and you can stream games to it and like whatever, right? They probably just go like, okay, well, that's it for that. And so we're going to make a cheap thing that's still called an Xbox that you can either stream games from the internet or from your other PC, like whatever else. And that stuff maybe does kind of go away in the traditional sense. But yeah, this stuff that's been going around, it doesn't like it just doesn't line up to me in a way that makes sense. Speaking of stuff that doesn't make sense, let me look this up. The Harlem Globetrotters are back in video game form. Not long after the NES Harlem Globetrotters game made its way to the very bottom of our ranked NES game list, Acclaim has announced a new basketball game, Super Basketball Classics, featuring the world famous Harlem Globetrotters. That's right. That's right. The Globetrotters are back. It is apparently the 100th year, the 100th anniversary of the Globetrotters. And so they are going to be appearing in game. I got an email press release about this, and like a chill went down my spine. Like, oh no. Which is a shame, because I like the Globetrotters. It's a very, I don't know, it's a very 70s fucking 80s kind of thing, I think. But, you know, what, they're still doing it. As a Meadowlark Lemon fan. As a Kids Against Crime fan, I like Meadowlark Lemon. Anyway, this is they're making a deliberately retro basketball game. They're saying inspired by classic 8 and 16-bit hoops games and rebuilt for modern players, that sort of thing. It's not just a pure Harlem Globetrotters game, thankfully. But it is something that they are a part of. Not too much detail in terms of the game itself. They put out a reveal trailer, and the reveal trailer does have Sweet Georgia Brown in it, which is more than I can say for the Harlem Globetrotters licensed NES game, which is a disaster of a video game that does not even have the music in it. So at least they've got that. Not a lot of other detail here in terms of like what the game is. The about Acclaim thing is such a, it's a like a half-truth kind of like about Acclaim. This is just the boilerplate in the press release. That's how far in the weeds we are here. Originally founded in 1987, Acclaim established itself over the years as a leading worldwide developer, publisher, and mass marketer, bringing beloved franchises such as Mortal Kombat, Turok, and NBA Jam to home consoles. Today, Acclaim carries forward the ideology on which it was founded, with its unrelenting support of talented indie developers and its delivery of high-quality premium indie games to a global audience of discerning gamers, and so on and so forth. It's like, they're two separate companies. Like, it's not, the lineage is not, okay. Yeah, I don't know. It's funny to me that there is a Harlem Globetrotters game. We did have the news last week. And also Midway made NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat. Acclaim did port them. You know, Acclaim owned developers, Acclaim contracted developers did the port work to home machines and all that stuff. But there's something and this is, you know, old Acclaim used to try to get away with this as well. This is not something that just new Acclaim does. But old Acclaim used to try to claim a lot of credit for Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam, to the point where Acclaim stole the name NBA Jam from Midway. And yeah, that was some filthy business. But yeah. Anyway, last week we got the news that PlayStation was looking to back away from putting its games on PC. This came to us out of Bloomberg and lines up with a lot of stuff that I had heard as well. I'm trying to remember I think we talked about this on the bonus show last week. So I don't think this was on the main podcast, but the long and the short of that is that it does seem like that PlayStation is backing away from those ports to PC. The reasoning is not maybe 100% clear, because this isn't something that PlayStation came out and officially announced. But it's my understanding that the typical studios inside of PlayStation that you would be counting on to port games to PC are no longer doing that kind of work. Video Games Chronicle has kind of put together a story about some of this stuff over at videogameschronicle.com, your home for the news. Zorga asks, does this mean Nixies is on the chopping block? I don't think so. I think Nixies is a studio that could be doing a lot of important work. You have to also remember that Sony is on the verge of, like, they are working on a new PlayStation. There are tools that have to be developed. There are things that have to happen. There's stuff, a lot of stuff that has to happen in order for a new console to get off the ground that a studio like Nixies, I bet, would be incredibly important. And also there are other platforms that those games could be getting ported to, I suppose. But it's not PC. So some of this comes from a research firm called Newzoo, and there's some quotes out of there. Newzoo's data shows that PlayStation titles ported to PC after their console launch typically see PC account for 13% of total players in the first 3 months across both releases. By comparison, when comparable AAA titles launch simultaneously on PC and console, PC contributes closer to 44% of players in the same period. And this isn't necessarily specific to PlayStation. Those are just numbers that are kind of specific to, when games simultaneously ship on multiple platforms, or when they kind of have a distance between them. But it seems like the information here is that, hey, these PC versions of these games have not necessarily been selling like gangbusters. They've been doing fine. That was always my understanding, is that the PC ports were well received. They were good ports of the games that ran quite well, and that they sold totally okay. But that's not why PlayStation leadership got into the business of putting these games on PC originally. It wasn't like necessarily just, hey, we want to make money. It was, hey, we want to extend the PlayStation brand across multiple platforms in a way that ideally leads people back to the mothership and gets them to buy a PlayStation 5. That's not, that never seemed attainable but that's why all these games had PSN logins and all the weird shit with Helldivers. Like they wanted to get more customers into their ecosystem and get them to buy PlayStations. It was like, Ghost of Tsushima would be a great example here of like, Ghost of Tsushima, I played that on PC. It was awesome. Oh, there's a new one coming out? Great. I love that game so much, I'm going to buy a PlayStation because I don't want to wait 6 months to play it on PC. That was the mentality they were trying to build. I think that's kind of wild. A lot of people talk about Death Stranding. Like, the thing to remember is, like, Death Stranding on PC was, like, originally published by, like, 505 Games. Like, there's a... Like, the Death Stranding PC relationship is a very different thing than the typical true first-party Sony game, as opposed to something developed externally at Kojima Studios and Productions, whatever. So Death Stranding is kind of its own unique thing in this landscape. It doesn't really fit the same way. But now, Ghost of Yotei is not going to come to PC. So, will those people buy a PlayStation? Right? I don't know. No, probably not. This is my answer, because PlayStations are fucking expensive. But like, so here we are with seemingly PlayStation kind of backing away from putting those games out on PC, because their goals were not what you thought they were. Their goals were to grow the PlayStation audience, and so ultimately, if that's not being done, and they've got other stuff cooking, and they've got other things going on, and other things they want to try, and a new console in the works, and everything else, like, it seems like it's very easy for them to walk away from this right now. I heard that they were going to port all those games to Apple platforms instead. I don't know if that's true or not. I have not been able to run that down. That was something I spent time talking to people at DICE about and going, hey, did you hear anything about this? And a lot of the answers were like, what? No, it was a lot of just like, that doesn't. So I don't know. But I heard that from a source that has been pretty accurate about some other stuff. That some of these games might find their way to Apple platforms instead. I don't know what that means. There's a new Apple TV around the corner that would theoretically be more powerful. I'm not talking about Mac OS. I mean, maybe that stuff ends up running across the board because all the Apple Arcade stuff does, right? So maybe. But we've been on the ride too many times for Apple, like Apple's getting serious about gaming, for me to take any of that stuff at face value, which is why I'm saying this out loud to you in a way that I will admit to you is slightly irresponsible. Because this is not something, I don't have two sources on this. I don't have, like, this is something that I heard and it sounds fucking crazy, but it sounds fucking crazy. And so I don't really know if that's going to be Sony was at one point porting their games to another console game, another console platform, and that dried up. And so like what they're doing here, I don't really know. But ultimately what they're doing here is they are working on the PlayStation 6. And that is the stuff they actually care about at the end of the day. And those sorts of plans probably take precedence over any of this other nonsense. Games on PC, all this other stuff. If they're like, okay, we need to make sure that everyone is up and running. We need to make sure that this stuff is up and running on PlayStation 6. We need to make sure that these games run right. We need to make sure that these tools are being developed to maturity in a way that we can give to third parties. Like, there's a lot of stuff they have to do right now. And I think that is the likely outcome here, or one of the probably things that is applying the most pressure to this whole PC game thing is that, like, hey, it's all hands on deck for new hardware. Like, we have to get the shit out the door, or we're going to delay it, or this or that. And like, that is such a weird scenario right now in so many different ways that they are probably just very, very focused on PS6. Because now would be the time frame for that, right? Like, if you were going to be porting games around or doing stuff, like, you would want a studio like a Nix's to be doing that sort of thing, I assume. But yeah, there's just a bunch of fucking weird shit going on. But I feel like you can explain a lot of it away by just looking at things and going like, you know what, PS6 is coming. And they want to make sure that launch goes as good as it possibly can. And so that's why they're not putting games on PC. And that's why they're not going to put games on Switch too. And that's why they're not going to put a ton of the games on Xbox or anywhere else. They're going to just stay focused on their shit because they've got to get that right. It's a scary enough business to ship hardware that gets scarier all the time. And so they're probably just focused on that. The notion that those PC ports didn't sell super well, I think only helps to make that decision easier, right? I'm just like, okay. And maybe they get back to it down the line. Maybe they try it again. Maybe when things kind of, on the other side of PlayStation 6 and they look at what they have resources-wise, maybe they again go like, let's put some more of these games on PC. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways this stuff could go, I guess, is the thing. Epic has decided to, exchange rates are real bad these days. The value of $1. The quote is amazing. They put out a blog post, but the quote that VGC pulled out of this is, the cost of running Fortnite has gone up a lot. And so V-Bucks are about to get more expensive. Tiny independent company Epic Games is just trying to keep the lights on over there. And so you used to be able to get 1,000 V-Bucks for $8.99, and now you will get 800. You used to get 2,800 V-Bucks for $22.99. Now you will get 2,400. $36.99 will get you 4,500 V-Bucks instead of 5,000. $89.99 will get you 12,500 V-Bucks instead of 13,500. And 99 cents will get you 50 V-Bucks. That used to be 49 cents. The battle pass, however, will go down in price because they want you to be able to buy that lowest currency pack and get a battle pass for it. The battle pass, the OG pass, will go from 1,000 V-Bucks down to 800. The music pass also loses 200 V-Bucks off of it, 1,400 to 1,200. Same with the Lego pass. And Fortnite crew members are getting their benefits cut. Instead of getting 1,000 V-Bucks as part of their monthly rewards, they will now only get 800. And so, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't, like, everything gets more expensive, like, especially these days. And so, like, on some level you go like, yeah, I bet there are aspects of running that business that are more expensive to run or whatever. But nothing about this feels like a good change. Nothing about this feels good or right. It, like, Epic is not the small company in this. It's not, it's just like, I don't know. There's something very funny about cutting it from Fortnite crew members. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. What, you thought Social Security was going to be around forever? Your benefits are cut, son. 800 V-Bucks. Also, this is something else from Video Games Chronicle. They noticed there was a Q&A that Sega ran in conjunction with their financial results. That I thought was kind of interesting. It's kind of a no-brainer in some ways. But just to ask what it sees as future challenges for its full game titles, Sega responded, while the development costs per title for our mainstay titles are lower compared to so-called AAA titles in the industry, we recognize that our strength lies in the relatively high acclaim we receive for quality. On the other hand, we also recognize that such high evaluations have yet to translate into a further increase in unit sales. And so basically what they're saying is that, our games have been reviewing really well, but who cares? Because reviews don't translate into sales. Which I think is I don't know, man. Like, it never really felt, as someone who has written thousands of video game reviews, I will tell you, at no point did it feel like I was impacting sales massively in one way or another. Instead, you would hear about it anecdotally. Hey, what you said about that game, I decided to go out and buy it. Or, hey, thanks for saving me money. I decided to rent that game instead of buy it. I turned out hating it or whatever. Which, to me, was one of the, when we were reviewing games with the frequency that we were, to me, that was one of the main goals. It was like, hey, we want to make sure that the people that are reading this work are making smart purchases, are liking the next thing that they buy, trying to help them, steer them away from bad games, because the bad games get the most marketing, and thus it's upon us to try to, fight against that marketing with information about the games and the quality of said games. But at no point was I under any sort of delusion of just like, I'm going to write this review and then 3 million sales or poof out the window, And so I don't really feel like it's ever necessarily been the case. I will say that those reviews are probably less influential now than ever, just by virtue of, this type of content being scattered across the internet. Like, Metacritic has never felt like less relevant. As a thing that, like, what are developers, like, as publishers, there are still some publishers that do still care about what their Metacritic rating is, and most of them are like, old. It's companies that have been around for a while, with people in those positions who have been in those positions for a while, if that makes any sense. Those are the ones that are probably most likely to still be like, what's our Metacritic or whatever. But like, as this stuff kind of scattered, I mean, there was a site banned from Metacritic for having an AI having AI write a Resident Evil review. Just fucking insane that would even happen. But I feel like that style of writing or that style of coverage, right? that style of visiting a website and reading a review, or watch, even just like watching a YouTube review of a thing, that is actually a review, because not to just go off on an entirely separate tangent, but like there's a part of YouTube's audience for gaming coverage that, like, no matter what you label a video, no matter what you do or say in the video, everything is a review to them. Things that I would think of as like, oh, this is like my first impressions on a thing, and I'm firing this up for the first time, and, you know, it kind of just like, I'm checking this out. That is never, you know, like I would never call it a review, because it is not like a fully, you know, I did not play the full game, did not, you know, it's, the reasoning is not necessarily there. I'm not writing this thing out. But like there is some segment of that audience that just takes everything to be like, oh, your review was this. It's like, dude, this was me playing the game for an hour and talking about it. Like, this is not a fucking review. You haven't even fucking seen a fucking review. Like that stuff's always kind of weird. But anyway, I don't know. I'm sad about the lack of relevance of that style of coverage, because I do think it can be very useful, and I think we're living in a world where, you know, like these prices and this stuff is getting worse all the time. You know, like games are getting more expensive, the economy is getting worse. Like the money that you spend on gaming more than, maybe not more than ever, but like more so now than in, you know, years past. You know, you could use some help out there. And that help comes in different forms than it used to. You know, I think, you know, word of mouth is a very different thing than it used to be. Also, you know, there are more opportunities for people to check out some version of a game, right? Whether it's a server slam or some kind of free weekend, or, hey, we did a demo on PlayStation, or a time trial, or, you know, there's a lot of games do get some sort of demo or beta or some kind of thing where you can maybe check them out. And that is ultimately, I think, if you have an opportunity to play the game for yourself. I mean, you know, Steam's refund policy helps with that too, right? I mean, you know, refunding a game within 2 hours or whatever. I think that stuff, all of those things have contributed to the kind of traditional video game review just being less relevant. And then you consider that, like, most of the sites that you would go to for reviews have rolled over most of their senior talent, and, you know, there's just that kind of brain drain type of thing associated with it as well. It's not the powerhouse traffic driver that it used to be. You know, the day one review right at the embargo and all that other stuff. The good news is, I think that just, it creates a lot of scenarios where you can just try different types of coverage. Like if you're in that line of work, and, you know, there's a lot of different things you can kind of do and think of, and you know, try to approach that coverage differently, knowing that the audience is maybe kind of looking for something a little bit different to begin with. Almost as sponsored streamers are the new game reviews. They're not, though. It doesn't, like, no one sees through that. Like the sponsored streamer thing is dead too. Like that was the truth when, like, Apex Legends was coming out, and like that time frame, that era, there was a real there was a premium being put on the sponsored stream by publishers. They saw that as like, okay, this is how we're going to get this person to play this game, and they're going to stream it, and that's our marketing plan. And that became the thing to do. But like that stuff stopped working in a number of different ways. For a number of different reasons, but like part of it is that the audience is not fucking stupid. Don't get me wrong. We're all stupid. But in this specific way, the audience has smartened up, and they know. They see a sponsored stream, they know. This is not, you know, and the streamers themselves, like, I would say, so this is look, professionalism is in relatively short supply these days. And so when you have these situations and you see them from both sides of it, where you see the sponsored stream where the audience is just shitting on that concept the entire time, like, oh yeah, this sponsored stream, oh yeah, oh, do you like it, what do you think about this, and like they're hip to it, they know that this is all bullshit. But then you get on the streamer side of things, the folks that do the sponsored stream and like uphold the letter of the law, and then as soon as the sponsored stream is over, immediately switch flip to just like, yeah, well, anyway, and then like halfway shit on the game that they just took money to play. And I like, good, I guess, like, whatever, man, be true to yourself once you're back in the truth zone. But I can't, like, none of it's the truth zone anymore. Once you start doing those types of streams, there is no truth zone to speak of. And so I find like the thing of like the streamer that does the sponsored stream and then immediately shits on the game, like an hour later, a day later, whatever it is, like that's almost worse. It's just like, you know, you are who you are, you know, you just like, don't try and win back credibility on the other side of that. Like, you took the money, you did the stream, like follow it all the way down, be a pro. And I think that stuff is even worse. But like all of that contributes to like the idea of a sponsored stream just doesn't work anymore. You know? Because the audience is used to seeing what that looks like. The streamers, I don't think, are good enough to make those streams seem honest or honest is authentic, I guess. Authentic in air quotes. Because it's the exact opposite of authenticity, right? But yeah, man, that stuff doesn't work the way it used to either, because I think the audience has gotten good enough to not be fooled by it. There was a time when the whole sponsored streams like, oh, you know, I'm going to keep playing this, I'm going to keep doing this. Like, I feel like that stuff just doesn't fly the way that it used to. You do still see, you know, you do still see like, creator events like WWE 2K26 just had one. There's a handful of things like that where it's like, we're going to fly you out to this thing and do like, it's not quite a junket because you're producing content about the game while you're there. But it's like, hey, we're going to get you in a room with CM Punk and you're going to be able to play the game and talk about it and how much you love it. And like that sort of stuff still exists, to some degree. And I think when you get people at those events that are not like acting in an editorial capacity, you do end up with this kind of like, this is great. Like that type of just like wide-eyed, you know, not thoughtful type of content or what have you. But yeah, man, I don't know. Reviews kind of bum me out, but like I understand why we got here. Like it's the reason why we stopped writing so many reviews years ago. It was just this realization of just like, yeah, this approach doesn't make a ton of sense. Both from the number of people that we have at our disposal to review games, the amount of time it takes, the value of said review, like, you know, all of those things changed on the content side of things too. And so, you know, like all of that adds up to just like, I think on both sides of the equation, right? Like publishers don't necessarily see increased sales on the backs of positive reviews. And on the other side of it, you know, like timely reviews does not bring in the traffic that it used to for a lot of these kind of traditional outlets. You'll still find, you know, like there are people that do quite well on YouTube with like timely content for sure. Like, hey, at the embargo, we had our, you know, video of Resident Evil 9 or whatever, and it did very well for them. Like, there are still people out there that are eating off of that, and, you know, like, good on them, I guess. Like, that's you know, there's still kind of that style of content to a degree. But yeah, it's just it's one of those things that I read and just went like, of course that's the case. It was kind of always the case that reviews never really felt like they were directly leading to sales. GameSpot tracks the product that they used to try to tie traffic metrics to sales of a video game, they were able to build a formula that worked for a while there before digital sales kind of came in and fucked it all up, and a lot of things fucked that up. But it was never like the positive or negative aspect of the review. It was just the level of how much did people know about this game? What was the, was there some positive sentiment, negative sentiment, or whatever is like maybe a part of that, but it was more just like, how many people have heard the name of this game before? That's how many copies we think it will sell, and so that was more of the metric that seemed to matter then, but that's mid 2000s. That's 20 years ago at this point. Digital sales and just the complete destruction of the monoculture in gaming, has completely changed all of that as well. So yeah, I'm kind of not surprised to see that. Insider Gaming is reporting something that they saw on Reddit that mentions Fallout 3 Remastered. There was a list of upcoming toys from Todd McFarlane Toys. Or I guess just McFarlane Toys, but you know it's Todd. It's a range of things like, some DC stuff, some Transformer stuff, but like among the list is a thing that says like basically, hey, we're also going to sell a Nuka-Cola bottle, and it's from something called Fallout 3 Remastered. Now, naturally, there is no announced Fallout 3 remaster, but I think anyone that has a few brain cells to rub together realizes that yes, they will eventually issue some sort of remake of Fallout 3. And so this seems to be kind of another pointer in that direction. But this is from a toy news site. And it seems like this is something that this is, I guess, not an official press release or anything like that, but it is a retail site that is getting ready to start taking pre-orders, which is, kind of always how that stuff goes. Has leaked a list of upcoming products that they would have presumably received from a distributor or somewhere up the chain. There's some other gaming stuff in here, like a Helldivers 2 figure. Battle damaged Catwoman from Batman Returns. Huh? Todd McFarlane does Batwoman, does Catwoman. Anyway, yeah. Some kind of very large replica Optimus Prime from the looks of this. And yes, some kind of... Well, it says T-45B Nuka-Cola. So that's like, what is that? That's the T-45B is power armor, right? Yeah. But is the T-45B in Fallout 3? Or is that... Anyway. Those signs would seem to indicate that they are going to, make some merchandise based on a game that has not been announced yet, which seems, again, enough people have... I think enough people have heard enough about, yes, they're doing a Fallout 3 thing, that it seems like, yes, they're going to very much do a Fallout 3 thing. Did I like Fallout 3 is the question. Except for the ending. I really liked Fallout 3 right up until I finished it. Yeah. As someone who had a super mutant companion, getting to the end of that game and it being like, no, you need to go make the noble sacrifice. Like that was just like, for a game that was built on treating your decisions logically and having dialogue and things written for every situation, to get to the end and have such a breakdown of that, to have like everything that the game has been quite good at up until that point, to get to that point and to have them have not properly accounted for that version of the ending was a slap in the fucking face. That's my problem with Fallout 3. Um, New Vegas, great game. Buggy, obviously. Fallout 4, no thanks. Bloomberg is reporting that NetEase has pulled out of its deal to fund Nagoshi Studio, which is Toshihiro Nagoshi's studio. Obviously, he was widely affiliated with the Yakuza games and is now working on Gang of Dragon. That game was looking pretty cool. And apparently NetEase has decided to pull out of the project. This is something that, Video Games Chronicle is reporting on this as well, and saying that the story allegedly was that they needed another $44 million to fund the rest of the game, and that NetEase heard that and went like, no. And that Nagoshi has to go out there and try to find additional funding, or they may not be able to finish and ship that game. Which sounds crazy because that game looked fucking cool as hell. However, NetEase, we do kind of hear, stuff like this with increasing frequency, that NetEase specifically seems to be pulling out of some of its funding. Obviously, there was the story with Tencent pulling out of funding Highguard post-release. VGC notes a handful of other studios, like Worlds Untold in Vancouver. That was the studio that Mac Walters founded. He was the writer. He was one of the writers on Mass Effect. And a number of other studios, of course, like Grasshopper was affiliated with NetEase. Like, they were owned by, anyway. Grasshopper is kind of out on its own, doing its own thing again. There's Kobayashi's studio. Like, there's a number of post NetEase studios that are still out there getting it done one way or the other. But yeah, there are a handful of studios that have had their funding pulled. This seems like, I if I had to guess, this is not going to be the last time we hear stories like this, not just about NetEase, but I would also say, this is probably something you hear more about. Tencent funded studios having their funding cut. We will see. Some folks are suing Valve. New York State, specifically the state of New York, is suing Valve over loot boxes, of all things. A second class action lawsuit over loot boxes has also been filed. And so that's two of those that they are now facing. This second lawsuit, I don't know, like something about class action lawsuits, like sometimes they feel incredibly valid. Sometimes they feel a little ambulance chasey, where they're trying to like line up people and go like, hey, if you ever bought a loot box in the thing, come join this thing. We're going to try to make a bunch of money. And it's just like, I don't know. It just seems kind of sleazy. But the state of New York is going after them as well. It's not just a class action thing, but some of the language across these complaints is similar, where they're looking at Counter-Strike and Dota and TF2 and looking at the way that cosmetics are sold in those games. The thing that this is not the first time Valve has faced this sort of pressure, but they've always beaten it by being like, hey, we don't run, like, this stuff has zero actual like monetary value inside of our system. Like, yes, there are other systems out there where people are trading this stuff for real dollars and whatever else, and But yes, the New York is kind of positing that Valve's operation represents an illegal gambling operation. This is from PC Gamer. And while the debate over whether loot boxes constitute a form of gambling continues to rage, the suit claims Valve's system does indeed qualify under Washington law, which is where this class action is being filed. which defines or I guess that's where Valve is based. Anyway, which defines gambling as, quote, staking or risking something of value upon the outcome of a contest or chance or a future contingent event not under the person's control or influence. Valve's loot boxes satisfy every element of this definition, the lawsuit alleges. So I think the difference in this modern run of lawsuits, this current run, is that they are not necessarily hanging their hat on the third-party site that turns into money. They're saying, hey, inside of the Valve ecosystem, this still represents gambling. At a time when gambling feels like it, and the prediction markets and all this sleazy stuff is underway, there's something really weird to me about this being the thing that people are chasing. I guess they're trying to say like, oh, it's video games, so it's kids, and that is the moral outrage they're trying to get on their side with these lawsuits. But at a time when sports leagues are advertising for sports betting and like a lot of I don't know, like at a time when all of that stuff is also happening, it feels very quaint in a weird way that that this is happening. But that said, I also think the idea that the skins market for stuff like CS2 has gotten as crazy as it has is also like not good. The idea that you've got gun skins in that game that are trading for the price of a house, like I think that a lot of that stuff is fucked. And like it's like so like none of that should be happening. So like I look at it and go like, yeah, probably makes sense that someone came after Valve for this stuff. It just like the landscape for like gambling and the legality of gambling today is so fucked to begin with that it just feels very weird to go after them when something like fucking Kalshi exists. Like I don't know. Like it's gross. It's all gross. Speaking of gross, Electronic Arts is laying off folks across many of the studios affiliated with the development of Battlefield 6. 2025's best-selling video game. We don't know the number of workers, but according to IGN, those layoffs are happening at studios, or happened last week at studios such as Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive. And that the internal messaging seems to be that they are realigning, now that the game's out the door, they are shifting into live service mode, and there's some realignment that probably naturally happens with that in terms of the types of roles you need on a team versus not. But like you would have known this years ago. You would have known that this is definitely like a Battlefield success or fail is going to go under some kind of shift where like, yeah, you probably don't need the people that wrote the single player campaign to be continued to be attached to this Battlefield game. So you should probably find something else for them to do by this date. So yeah, they've laid some folks off. The only comment that IGN got out of EA says, we've made select changes within our Battlefield organization to better align our teams around what matters most to our community. Battlefield remains one of our biggest priorities, and we're continuing to invest in the franchise, guided by player feedback and insights from Battlefield Labs. Okay. Like Battlefield is, like I said, the best-selling game of last year, and also these would have been things that, by and large, you would have understood that like there would need to be some changes from pre-launch to post-launch in terms of how the development resources are allocated. And it makes me think about like just this idea of like employment at a video game studio and, unionization, and like some of these people should probably just be union folks who move from project to project, right? Like, Battlefield's not going to need another like campaign writer for another handful of years here until they decide to make another one and they decide to make a campaign again. Like, there's just naturally going to be positions that you don't need anymore once that specific work is done. You would think like, oh, well, they're going to roll over and start working on the next thing immediately, but apparently EA didn't have that, or they didn't think about it, or who knows. But it should be a situation where like those folks are like, okay, I'm done on this project. This was a contract-based, like a project-based thing, and because I'm part of a union, I'm able to get my health coverage and this care and this and that, and like it should almost just be structured that way, the way like film production is sort of done. At least in some of these roles, I mean, like you don't necessarily want 100% of a game's team to be just kind of doing whatever is next. You want some kind of through line, some kind of consistency, but like, but it feels like that's a sort of scenario where there are naturally going to be a lot of roles that do that. And codev studios kind of take on some of that work. Outsourcing picks up a lot of the slack there for a lot of these companies these days. It just seems like that you would have seen this stuff coming from a mile away. I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily look at this as like, oh, Battlefield's a failure. Like things happened, like, as that game, as they launched Red Sec and got into some of their seasonal content, some people definitely fell off of the game. Obviously, the death of Vince Zampella means that like this organization is kind of without a leader, or they've probably appointed someone into that role, but like from a vision perspective, what does Battlefield do from here? Like that's the sort of stuff that Vince would have been there to be good at. I'm not saying that these people would not have been laid off if he had not, passed away, but like that's, I'm sure, some kind of strange pull on some of this stuff as well, at least as far as like what EA decides to do next. It's a bad situation. The Red Sec stuff was not a successful launch. I know they were going to test solos in that. I was thinking about re-downloading it and trying that out. Because I did not like playing Red Sec with other people, but I don't know. Like I said, it just seems like the sort of thing that you'd go like, well, yeah, of course there are going to be people that worked on Battlefield that, because this is not an annual franchise and because the campaign was not super well received, or whatever, like, yeah, you should be prepared to find other roles for these folks on other teams, because the Battlefield team probably doesn't need to be this size constantly. And the idea that like they apparently did not do that, it just feels crazy to me. I don't know. That's it for the news. Let's take some emails here. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. Let's get into it. Ian writes in with a question about Bethesda. Since the acquisition, Xbox has seen content to let only Bethesda game studios develop Elder Scrolls and Fallout titles. Do you think with new leadership we are likely to see other studios utilize this IP? No, I don't. No, I think that like that is something that like Todd Howard and Todd Howard's team probably has a pretty firm grasp on what they want to do with those specific franchises. And instead of assigning that stuff to another team, it would be more likely for them to staff up at BGS to make sure that they have what they need to get those games done. There was a Fallout thing in development at another Microsoft-owned studio that I think is no longer going to see the light of day. But like, this is, they will probably not do the remakes. I think those have been outsourced to other, like the Fallout 3 thing, I think has been outsourced to an external studio. But but new games will probably come from that brain trust. And I think that they probably will continue to have a pretty firm grasp on that. Let's see here. $78 plays. I don't know. That's not. Anyway, that's just a weird looking email address. In hindsight, it seems like an obvious strategy that Microsoft should have adopted is making the games of all the studios it bought exclusive to Xbox. From a consumer perspective, the lack of good first-party games has been a huge issue for Xbox since the launch of the Xbox One, and I have a hard time believing Call of Duty wouldn't make people buy an Xbox. Why didn't they do this? The government would not let them. And also, probably the numbers they ran indicated that if they pulled, by the time they were buying Activision, the die had been cast. And more people were going to buy those games on PlayStation than on Xbox. And like, they didn't buy Activision to like go win a console war. They had already hard pivoted into Game Pass and like a very different type of business at that point, And so like the thing you're asking for is not a thing that they care about the same way that they used to, 15 years ago or whatever. So, and I don't think that if they had done all that, I don't think it would have necessarily been like, oh, now the Xbox One, the Xbox Series X is flying off shelves. Like, I don't think anything would have created that scenario at that point. So to take like Call of Duty, which at the time was the biggest selling game in the world, and say, okay, the platform where like what percentage, probably over half, 60% or whatever of Call of Duty sales are on a non-Xbox platform. Yeah, fuck them. That's a terrible. That's just setting money on fire. You don't buy Call of Duty so that you can make it exclusive to your platform, just like they didn't do it with Minecraft or any of this other stuff. It just didn't make any sense to do so from a monetary perspective. So yeah, you maybe could have done this, and sure, yeah, maybe some people would have bought an Xbox, but that would not make up for the money you would lose. You would not sell so many Xboxes that would make up for the loss of that PlayStation revenue. Call of Duty was something that they wanted to buy to help bolster Game Pass. And so they could look at it that way and go, oh, well, yeah, it's available on all those other platforms, but on Xbox, you can play it as part of a subscription service and not have to pay an individual fee for it, which turned out to not be attractive to people. I think that the calculus they've done, and I think they were right to do it, they did it a long time ago, was that very idea of like, hey, from an ecosystem perspective, it's really hard to get people to shift, especially mid-generation. And so like people had already bought a PlayStation or they'd already bought an Xbox. They weren't necessarily going to swap one for the other. It just didn't make sense. And so at no point in buying Call of Duty were they sitting there thinking, and it's going to be all ours and we're going to only put it on our console. Like, you don't, that's a bad use of money at that point. If anything, they probably learned a little bit from the ways they handled stuff with Bethesda prior to that. And now, those with backwards compatibility, Zatoichi's right. With backwards compatibility, we're always technically mid-generation because, like your legacy catalog of games, especially as more and more digital sales are made, matters more and more as time goes on. So it gets harder and harder to dump that entire catalog for a different platform all the time. It's why you hear, some of the stuff about the Phil Spencer stuff was this idea of just like they lost the exact wrong generation because they lost the generation where digital sales really, really, really had a major uptick and those back catalogs started being built. And so that's very hard to fight back from. And that's why I think it's a big part of why they've pivoted and now they're going to make a PC and why they're going to, if things were running smoothly for them, they wouldn't change shit. They wouldn't have to. Look at PlayStation. PlayStation's just like sitting back and I think that will bite them in the ass or already is biting them in the ass in some not so obvious ways. not so visible, not so publicly messy as the way that Xbox went through it. But like PlayStation's not in some like amazing, like awesome position. It's a weird business now. Let's see here. See if we have any more. Steven writes in and asks, should cutscenes have a progress bar like any video player? No. Anyway, in modern games, should cutscenes have a progress bar or timeline like any video player, letting the player know how long it is before they have control again, or would this make enjoyment of cutscenes worse? Should players be able to increase speed like a podcast? Should players be able to rewind a cutscene along that timeline if they missed something, or go replay cutscenes in a menu? I think more options like this would be good for all players, from iPad kids all the way up to busy parents. So I think people should be able to rewatch cutscenes. Like, yeah, sure, you know, you put a library full of cutscenes or whatever. I think games that have a you know, meaningful dialogue in those cutscenes should be good about rewording that information to you in different ways after the fact, if not letting you rewatch the cutscene in its entirety or whatever. But I think double speed on cutscenes is gross. I think increased speed on that is nasty. I don't even necessarily think that, you know, all cutscenes must be skippable. I think that it's nice when they are, and it's a nice option to have. You should be able to pause them. That I very much agree with. Like, you should be able to pause during a cutscene. But anything else other than that, like, I think skipping cutscenes is kind of dirty business. At least on first viewing, you know. If you want to allow people to skip a cutscene that they've seen before, fine, whatever. But I think, like, yeah, skipping cutscenes that you haven't seen yet. At some point, it's like, why are you playing this game? Right? Like, even if I don't think the cutscenes are good, or if I think the cutscenes are long, like, I still want to see what the fuck it is. Like, I might stop playing the game after that and be like, I can't believe they just showed me a 45-minute unskippable cutscene of these fucking guys sitting in a fucking Jeep saying very little. But hey, actually that whole sequence is not so bad. But yeah. It's going to do it for us here. Thanks everybody for listening to the show. I will be back tomorrow. We might look at I don't know, like we'll hang out for a while tomorrow, and then maybe we'll check out WWE 2K whatever, 2K26, and look at the roster in that game. But I don't know. Now that I don't watch WWE, it's all just a mystery to me. But there's a cutscene. I launched it on PC, and I watched the introductory cutscene for the Island mode, and it was so bad that I quit halfway through, hoping that it plays it again next time I load it up, because you need to see this fucking thing. I have been seeing videos of this game in action, and they have overhauled, I guess, some of the ragdoll physics. And between that and I guess that island mode, which has you wandering around, you know, like doing moves on people in the middle of this kind of like larger environment or whatever it is, there are a lot of situations where you can just like fucking drop kick a guy off a very high place and have him land on his dumb fucking head, and just like stuff that you just look at and go like, that looks fucked. Like there's just a lot of fucking insane looking shit like that, of like, oh, I threw the steel steps from the top of the cage over to the top of this ambulance, and it hit this guy, and then he fell off the ambulance and landed head. And you're just like, look at it and go like, this is, don't try this at fucking home. And then they know, yeah, exactly. They know sell it and get right up. Anyway, maybe we'll take a look at that just because I want to see some of that shit. It sounds like it's pretty much just the same game with, you know, some slightly different modes or whatever. So like whatever, but like the the physics stuff at least sounds interesting, and that cutscene was. Wrestler voice acting is a specific subgenre, I think, and it's oftentimes really, really bad, and this was some of the worst. Out of who was it? It was CM Punk, Rhea Ripley, and a third person who I cannot remember now. But it was real fucking bad. And so hopefully we'll be able to watch hopefully we won't be locked out of that cutscene. And we'll be able to watch that. But yeah, maybe we'll take a look at that tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where the day takes us. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.